am just checking to make sure that we are live. Everybody turn off your live feeds so we don't get any feedback or echo here. All right, can everybody see me?
Yes.
Okay, okay, everybody, if you could turn back your, shut off your Facebook so there's no feedback in the sound. Okay, all right, everybody, welcome to the second annual Oscar Cook-Along edition of Hollywood Kitchen. This is going to be really exciting and really fun. And is the speaker view working, you guys? I don't see the speaker view working. Okay. Anyway, well, whatever. Speaker view is not working. Hang on.
I think people can control that on their own computers. I can. Oh no, maybe not for Facebook though.
All right, you just talk, Danny, so I cut to you. Okay, all right, I'm gonna just go ahead with this. Okay, welcome to the Oscar Cook-Along. Today, the theme is they should have won an Oscar, they did not, and that stinks. And we're gonna talk about some of our favorite stars, why they deserve to win, either for a particular performance or in general. By the way, honorary and childhood statuettes do not count. We're talking about competitive acting awards here. And I've got some brand new faces joining us today, in addition to a lot of our Hollywood Kitchen regulars. And we're gonna have a lot of fun. So everybody is gonna take turns. I'm gonna introduce them and they'll present their dish. They will discuss their star. Some of us have memorabilia to share. If not, that's okay too. And then we will have a discussion following each presentation as well. So we're gonna kick things off with Benjamin joining us all the way from Germany to talk about Marilyn Monroe and why she so richly deserved an Oscar, didn't get one, and why that stinks. Okay, Benjamin, take it away.
Yes, thank you, Carrie. Good evening from Germany. So I'm so thrilled to join you. It's a wonderful group. Yes, so Carrie, when you asked me, well, who would you like to present? I thought, well, I need to step in for Marilyn because I think she deserves all the recognition. And I really think she did a great job when she filmed Bus Stop in 1956. That was the part she did when she came back to Hollywood after her acting lessons with Lee Strasberg in New York, and she had a new contract with Fox. And I think this is a movie that was really meaningful to her. So I think at least she should have deserved a nomination. Yes, because that was a real part she was playing. So that wasn't a glamour girl part. Maybe it was a glamour girl in a way, but yeah, she very much focused on the character, like the pale makeup and, you know, the shady clothing and everything. Yeah, so I think that's really a part, and critics were very good then. They said, well, she can really act. So, and I think even the director, Joshua Logan, he said, well, at least she should have been up for nomination. So, well, interestingly, I found out that exactly 65 years ago, on March the 27th, 1957, there was the Oscars at the RKO Pantages Theater, and the nominees for Best Actress 1956, I'm reading to you, were Ingrid Bergman for Anastasia, Carol Baker for Baby Doll, Katharine Hepburn, The Rainmaker, Nancy Kelly for The Bad Seed, and Deborah Carr, The King and I. So there wasn't any Marilyn, but I have an envelope here, surprise, surprise. I will announce the winner, unless you don't know. So the winner was Ingrid Bergman for Anastasia. And interestingly, she didn't show up. That was Cary Grant who accepted the prize for her. And you can watch it also on YouTube. It's very interesting. And what is also interesting is that Don Murray, who was Marilyn's co-star in that movie, and it was his first movie, he was nominated as Best Supporting Actor, but didn't win. So it was his only Oscar nomination. But I have an autograph here he sent me a few years ago And together with a note, I will show it to you. And I will read it to you. He wrote to me, to Marilyn Monroe fan club, greetings, like you. I'm a big fan of Marilyn Monroe and think she deserves a Lifetime Achievement Award from the Academy. Sincerely, Don Murray. So that's very interesting, I think. Yeah, so in honor to Marilyn, I give this award to her. Thank you for being such a light for so many people all around the world. I think it's really amazing. Yes, and the recipe, well, it is kind of hard to pick or to find a recipe which is actually done by Marilyn. We once did, that's the only one I knew for sure that she wrote it down, was the Thanksgiving stuffing.
Yes.
But I found another recipe which is related to her on a blog by Tori Avey. And it's a artichoke and carrot salad because she liked to eat that. So it goes very well together with a steak. And the ingredients are artichoke hearts, frozen or canned, some olive oil, a carrot, endive, sliced, what else? Dill, fresh dill, and a little bit of lemon juice, honey, salt, and pepper. And this is how it looked like when we made it today. So I think it's very easy to make, and it's very, yeah, very good, I have to say. So, and I found quotes of Marilyn. She said, well, I can never get enough of carrots, actually. And there are quotes. She said, when I get back from the studio, I'm dropping into a market and buying a steak and some carrots, and that's all. So she was kind of a low carb diet, so to say, even in those days. But I can really tell you, it's a very easy to make recipe, and it's delicious. So yeah, so cheers to Marilyn.
Cheers to Marilyn. I think the Misfits, to me, is a gut-wrenching performance. I think that's another one of Marilyn's movies that people don't really credit her nearly enough as an actress for.
Absolutely. She was so underestimated. You know, she was seen as just as the glamour girl and not as an actress at all. And well, maybe what was confusing to the people is that they mixed up the Marilyn character, who was kind of a character she was playing. Yes, and so they thought, oh, well, she can be an actress. She's just a glamour girl. But I'm very grateful that she deserves even more recognition. Just this year, there was this documentary about her, Reframing Marilyn Monroe, which was giving a different point of view. And yeah, so I'm happy that she finally deserves the recognition. And even though she hasn't got an Oscar, she has the love of many people all over the world, which is great.
And she's memorable. There's a lot of people who won Oscars that nobody really talks about or remembers their work. And then there's people like Marilyn. You can't walk down the street in this town without seeing her on murals, her on products. I mean, she literally is everywhere.
Yeah, she really is Hollywood, I think. So, and what is interesting, she once was a presenter at the Oscars in 1951 for Best Sound, which went to All About Eve. And she had this a black robe on, very beautiful gown, which was from the Fox department, wardrobe department, actually. It was worn before by an actress, Valentina Cortez, I think. So interestingly, it's that well, today they have the designers and they made custom-made gowns for them. And she just went to the Fox wardrobe department and picked a gown she liked. So I like that.
That is very interesting.
It was very cute.
Anybody else have some thoughts on Marilyn?
Benjamin, do you know if 20th Century Fox ever like mounted a campaign for her? Wasn't that important back then? Or did they figure she's such a gold mine, we don't even look at her that way?
Well, they wanted to have her in the same part, and that was because she stepped away from Hollywood and from Fox, and then they built up like people like Sherry North and Jane Mansfield later on, and she came back, which was she had her own production company founded, and the Sherry part in Bus Stop was one she really wanted to play. So, and she convinced people to get director's approval and script approval. And so that was a very meaningful project, I think, for her. And yeah, it's totally a different Marilyn film, I think, when you compare it to the other ones, which were like glamorous musicals and stuff. So yeah, although she has such a short career, sadly, it is interesting to see the variations of her characters.
Benjamin, I have to quickly tell you, Edith Head is watching, and she has just commented that she thoroughly approves of your attire, and you look very dapper.
Oh, thank you. I thought this was a match to Marilyn, the red one, you know. So
I do want to say that Thelma Ritter was very close to Marilyn. They worked on several movies together. And so I have some information that's going to be coming out in the book when I finish.
yeah, great. That's so interesting to learn about the connections. I love them together in the Misfits, and it seems like Thelma was supporting Marilyn in the
All the
acting
way.
thing.
Yes,
Yeah.
behind the scenes, during the scenes. Yes, she was.
Benjamin, do you know Marilyn's own feelings about the Academy Awards? If there was a role that she felt she should have gotten a nomination for, or how she
Yes.
sort of felt about that kind of recognition?
I actually read that she was quite disappointed. She wasn't up for the Cherie part, because that was the first part she was really into the character, and she did, you know, the makeup and the costumes, and she said no, she needs to have a pale makeup because she's a cabaret singer, so she works at night and sleeps during the day. She doesn't see any sunlight, so the makeup must be pale. And yeah, sadly, she wasn't up for an Oscar. So I read that she was quite disappointed, but then she said, well, okay, let's move on. So.
All right, well, Benjamin, thank you so much for presenting on Marilyn and representing her. I'm so happy that you chose her and chose to do this. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. Now,
Thank
next
you.
up, we have Jack Priest joining us in Hollywood, all the way from Australia. We have Darren Barnes working behind the scenes. He's a Hollywood Kitchen regular. And we have 1930s child actress extraordinaire, Cora Sue Collins, and they are going to share their thoughts on William Powell, why he richly deserved an Oscar. He didn't get one, and of course, once again, that stinks. So, since the William Powell recipes involved either crushed beets or cow intestines, we have in advance decided that Cora Sue is going to make and drink a martini in Mr. Powell's honor. So, Jack, Darren, Cora Sue, take it away. Guys?
Hello, how are you?
Hello, good to be here.
Yeah, so I'm sure everybody knows Cora Sue made a film with William Powell in 1934 in Myrna Loy, Evelyn Prentice. So there's some great photos of them on the set together with William Powell sitting in Cora Sue's little director's chair, actually winding, was it yarn? Because you were knitting. So a couple little gag photos. And I pulled out an 11x14 photo that
Hello, is your internet frozen, Darren? Guys, I'm sorry. I don't know what happened. We had an internet outage, it seems.
That's called a glitch. We understand that. I was talking about William Powell. I'm saying what a delightful man he was, how much I enjoyed our friendship, and how blessed I was to have him as my friend the rest of his life. As an adult, we were great friends. And he used to come and visit me and my children, and he was just a wonderful, wonderful man. And now we're going to make a martini, and I'm going to sip it. I won't drink it because I'm a cheap drunk. I go to sleep. So I will have a toast to William Powell. Shall we make our martini?
Absolutely.
Okay, Jack. Way we go.
Okay, so
All right, now.
this ice in.
Yes.
Oops. Should we
That's
put
okay.
both of them in? Do you think?
I don't think we really need both, but as long as they're crushed, we might as well. There we go. Now we have nice chilled glasses.
Mm-hmm.
Then we have to start with a little vodka. Mhm.
Back in the picture.
Mhm. Now, we do a spritz. This is the vermouth. This is just a spritz. Thank you.
Mhm.
There we go.
Little vodka. Should we put this one or this one?
Oh, I think we do this one.
This one? Okay.
I think we do two each. I
Two
believe.
each.
I think. Did we do two or three?
3 each.
Three each.
Three
Three
each,
each,
okay.
right.
So Jack and Cora Sue and I were discussing earlier why we felt that William Powell didn't get an Oscar. And I think we all agreed that he just made it look too easy. So, you know, he had a few films where he really got to sink his teeth in, but he was just so known as Nick Charles and just the suave debonair guy that I think even later on he did, what was the one he did with Esther Williams? I think they tried to send him down a little more of a dramatic road,
Yes,
but it just, you know, people just wanted him to be Nick Charles.
that's all I wanted. And he was the perfect Nick Charles.
Yeah. And you figured if Clark Gable could get a nomination for It
Sure.
Happened One Night, that
Mhm.
William Powell should have gotten one for Thin Man.
Absolutely.
I think that where was that photo of this? I think it's a really interesting story. Didn't this come from his estate, this photograph?
Mhm.
So he
Yes.
kept it all
Mhm.
those years, that photo of you two together.
Yeah, so there was a William Powell estate sale a number of years ago, a couple of years ago that Bonhams had. And wasn't a whole lot of film stills, but one of the stills that was actually part of the estate that they were kind enough to actually gift to Cora Sue was a picture of William Powell and Cora Sue in a tender scene from Evelyn Prentice.
Yes.
So really feel like, well, you know, Cora Sue meant a lot to William Powell as well.
He was my sweetheart. He was a love. Now,
Let's do this.
we're going to. Oh, no, we put the, no, we have to put the juice in.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
So
the olive
this
juice.
makes it-
So to make it a dirty martini, it's the olive juice is what makes it dirty. So
Right.
depending on how dirty you want your martini to be, it depends on how much juice you want to put in.
I think we put it, let's put it
Or
right
do
in.
people want to know what kind of gin you're using?
We're actually using vodka.
Vodka, okay.
So it's
Vodka of the gods.
vodka of the gods. She had some better vodka, but they were all empty from some of the many, many parties. So I found vodka of the gods in her cabinet. And I figured, well, we'll use it today.
Right.
But usually what, Belvedere or
Belvedere is great. And when I was in Paris, I saw a documentary
that's the gin.
on Belvedere.
Is that gin or vodka?
No, Belvedere is vodka.
Okay.
Friend of mine imports it. Anyway, I saw a documentary and they did a testing, blind testing. And Belvedere turned out to be the second best vodka. No, one of the first. The second best was one that was called Kirkland. Well, it took me 3 years to figure out that Kirkland was Costco. And their vodka is superb. It's the second best, supposedly, according to this French, very fancy group of people, the second best vodka in the world. So now I buy Kirkland vodka from Costco.
Well, let's pour these martinis.
Yes.
Okay.
So you got to pour these in.
Pour them in.
Mhm.
So I rinsed the glasses off and froze them this morning for a few hours. So they're ice cold.
Wonderful.
And then right before we poured this, I had ice cubes in them. So we
Mhm.
just dumped the ice cubes out. So the colder the glass, the better the glass.
Mhm. I'll go more for you.
There you go.
Just want to make sure it's.
And then
Oh, yeah.
and then with the vermouth, you just spray that on top of the cocktail. You gotta spray the vermouth course in.
Excuse me a second.
Yeah. And it's all about a hint of vermouth is the idea when you're making the ideal martini. And then you pick the olives.
Mhm.
Got it?
I think so.
Yeah. All right, perfect. Just throw it in. It's good. It doesn't have to be perfect.
It's not.
Oh, let me go around that side really quick.
And then we're going to drink a toast
To William Powell.
to our darling William Powell. My dear friend, to you. That's exactly the way you live life.
Yeah, so William Powell ended up retiring, marrying his wife, Mousie, and lived with her until he died, I think at 83 or 84, and he was in his 90s.
Mhm.
So he lived a good long life in retirement out in Palm Springs. So as part of that William Powell auction a couple of years ago, I'll move in. A couple of years ago, I did buy a personal photo album of theirs because I felt like I just had to have a little piece of it and a little piece of them. So it's party photos through the 50s and the 60s. So there are photos of him, which I love, and maybe you guys can actually see it. It's like he and Gloria Swanson. So in the 60s, like these great snapshots. Clark Gable and Kay and Mousie, William Powell and Mervyn Leroy at a party at their house in Palm Springs. So, and there are literally dozens of photos of Rosalind Russell and Janet Gaynor and Gloria Swanson and all of their movie star friends coming out to visit them. So they stayed very social, and it just looks like they just had a really good time. There's some really campy photos where William Powell bought Mousie this yellow jacket, I think around 1960. And then William Powell posing in the jacket, like hamming it up. So he definitely had a good sense of humor in his personal life too. But I thought it'd be fun to just share a few of those while we were here today too.
I'm so glad you brought that album.
Absolutely.
Terrific photos.
Thanks. Anybody have any questions of Cora Sue?
Yeah, let me check Facebook right now and see if we have any questions poured in for Cora Sue here.
Cora Sue, it's so good to see you. This is Danny. Hi, Cora Sue.
Oh, Danny. Hi, sweetie. How are you?
Hey. You know, I love that ad we found once that obviously Myrna Loy and William Powell were not Nick and Nora Charles at all in your film. They were different characters, but there was an announcement saying Nick and Nora Charles had a child, Cora Sue Collins, which was so weird that they tried to promote it. But I just wondered if you had anything to say about Myrna Loy, someone else who I believe should have won a damn Oscar.
Absolutely.
Oh, I loved Myrna. She was just a delightful person. She was a dear, gracious lady and remained a friend of mine all her life.
Tell about your autograph photo.
Oh my God. I have the most adorable photograph from her. I never was able to ride a bicycle because the studio wouldn't let me, but she rode a bicycle. And she said, what did she say about?
I hope you get to go to Europe one day.
Yes.
And something about getting.
Think of me when you ride a bicycle.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Because she rode a bicycle all over Europe. I never did do that, but she was delightful. Sweet, sweet lady. And beautiful.
Someone did mention that, by the way, William Powell, they said, did get nominated for The Thin Man. He just didn't win. But I agree. I think you guys make a great point about him getting completely taken for granted. I think we had that problem with Cary Grant as well, which we'll talk about later. But yeah, I think some of them made it look so effortless that everyone assumed that it was.
He made it look, but he made everything look so natural.
Perfect. So I found the Myrna Loy photo.
Oh, good.
You want to read it, Cora Sue?
If I can. To Cora Sue, hoping
You someday ride a bike in Europe and think of me, love Myrna Loy. So it was a very sweet scene. And I guess Myrna Loy had just gotten back from her honeymoon.
Mm-hmm. She's a beautiful lady.
Gorgeous.
As sweet as she was beautiful.
Good to see you, Cora Sue.
Good to see you.
I have a question, Cora Sue.
Yes.
You actually told me you knew Marilyn before she was Marilyn. I just have to ask you that. Maybe you can tell us about it.
All right. I was at an airport because I was going to New York to do a public relations stint. And a fellow that wanted to date me was at the airport. And he decided he was going to go to New York and take me to some of the famous restaurants in New York. And there was this nice young woman there, very attractive, but sort of plain. And it was Marilyn before she was Marilyn. And she had a crush on this fellow. Anyway, he ended up by marrying Lana Turner. Long story. But that was when I first met her, and then later we became friends. And she was an extremely talented lady, very unassuming, and totally un-Marilyn. If she wanted to be Marilyn, we were out somewhere, I don't remember where, some park. And I said, it's amazing that you can go this way and be totally anonymous. And she said, you want to see Marilyn? So she took the pins out of her hair and fluffed her hair like this. And out of the grass came all these people. And there they were. That was Marilyn. But that was not the Marilyn I knew.
Thank you. So interesting.
Anybody else have questions for Cora Sue?
I think we could play this game all day. Did you ever meet this person? Did you ever meet that person? But Ms. Collins, I will be profiling Mr. Powell's former wife, Carol Lombard, a little later in this episode. And I was wondering if you ever had the opportunity to meet her and if you had any memories of her.
I did. I met her and I liked her. My mother never liked her because she thought that she broke up his wedding, which was, of course, not so. Broke his marriage up. But Carol Lombard was a very nice lady and a very beautiful woman.
Thank you.
Those actresses were really gorgeous. They were Glam girls.
And going through Cora Sue's scrapbooks, at one point she was considered for Now and Forever with
Shirley Temple.
that Shirley Temple did. And one of the things I always find fascinating about Cora Sue's career is that she was actually slated to be in Little Miss Marker and was doing a film at Warner Brothers that ran long, and Shirley stepped in at the 11th hour and got Little Miss Marker, which made her a star and took her in a whole different direction. But it could have made Cora Sue's life completely different if that hadn't happened.
I didn't know that story.
It's in her scrapbooks. It's in a Variety. It's documented.
Oh, yeah, it's documented. And it taught me something very, very important. Luxury of anonymity. I'm so glad it didn't happen to me, because I love being a nobody. People would say, and what do you do and where are you from? And I say, I'm a housewife from Phoenix. And I love that.
Speaking of roles, Cora, so I think it's a terrific story about, was it the one with Zazu Pitts and Slim Somerville?
Unexpected Father.
Unexpected Father. There was another little girl in that audition room who was auditioning for your part. And it would have been her first role, but you ended up being picked for the role instead. Who was that little girl who was there?
That little girl was Judy Garland, who became Judy Garland. And coincidentally enough, my late husband built Carnegie Lodge, and he gave the Gum sisters their first gig. I mean, it was a long, long family. But that was Judy. Good friend.
I think you should have got nominated for an Oscar for that film, Cora Sue. At age 3, you were fantastic in it.
Yeah.
And I think Cora Sue should have gotten a childhood Oscar. Remember when they gave the little child Oscars out? I think Cora Sue, we've got a live person on the show today who should have gotten one, didn't.
Yeah. I would have loved to have gotten one, but I'm just as happy without it.
Well, we're just happy that you're with us, Cora Sue. You are such a treasure, such a wonderful lady. And I think I speak for all of us when I say we're just so honored to have you.
Hi, Cora Sue. I'm glad to see you. I am featuring Cary Grant. I know everyone's surprised today. And Jean Arthur. And I was just curious if you had any recollections of any time with them in Hollywood.
Yes, but not very clear. I mean, I knew them, but not well.
Okay, no problem. Well, Cora Sue, I hope that you can, if you have to go, we understand. But if you can stay with us, we are going to talk about a bunch of other stars that I'm sure you're going to want to maybe weigh in on throughout the episode today. So if you and Jack and Darren want to stick around, awesome. If not, I'm so grateful, and we all toast to you and, of course, to the great William Powell.
Yes.
Okay, next up, we have a very recurring Hollywood Kitchen guest, And I don't know about you guys, but I don't think anybody has ever uttered the words, "I'm tired of Ava Gardner." I haven't, and I never will. I'm a huge Ava Gardner fan. So all the way from North Carolina, once again, second week in a row, welcome Miss Laura Stalker, here to talk about Ava Gardner and her Oscar worthiness.
Hi, everyone. I'm excited to be back 2 weeks in a row. I don't know if you've had that frequent of a recurrence, Carrie, but I appreciate you asking me to participate, and I'm always happy to talk about Ava. For those of you who don't know, she was nominated just once. Unfortunately, I feel like she should have been nominated at least one other time, but she was nominated for her role as Eloise Honeybear Kelly in Magambo. That came out in late 1953. It was for the 1954 award season. Incidentally, her then husband, Frank Sinatra, was also up for an Oscar in 1954. Of course, he won for From Here to Eternity as Best Supporting Actor, but she had some stiff competition. She was up against Leslie Caron for Lily, Deborah Carr from Here to Eternity, Maggie McNamara for The Moon is Blue, and Audrey Hepburn for Roman Holiday. And of course, Audrey Hepburn was the winner. So it's always tough when you see who they're up against. We love our stars and want them to win, but it's also, I can understand how Audrey Hepburn just blew everyone away in Roman Holiday. But I love Magambo. I think it's a wonderful film. I also think she was fantastic in several other movies, but I think she should have gotten a nomination for The Night of the Iguana. I think that was a really great role for her. And, listening to Benjamin speak earlier about Marilyn, Ava had that same kind of, she was stereotyped to some degree because she was so stunningly beautiful that people didn't always appreciate just the depths and talent that she brought to the characters and the roles that she played. I think now we can look back and really see all the things that made her a very unique screen presence and see her work, the totality of her body of work, and see that she could thrive in musicals and dramas and comedies and horror films. I mean, she just kind of did a little bit of all of it. And we're so lucky today that we get to see the full body of work and see all that she was able to achieve in her film role, even if she didn't get another nomination or didn't win. Thought I'd just share a quote that she said in her book, her autobiography, Ava, My Story, about the film Magambo. She said, "As far as my career as an actress went, Magambo was probably as close to a pinnacle as anything I've done. For someone with my naturally irreverent temperament, playing a sassy, tough-talking playgirl who whistles at men, drinks whiskey straight from the bottle, and says about wine, any year, any model, they will bring out the better nature in me, was a gift from the gods. I never felt looser or more comfortable in a part before or since, and I was even allowed to improvise some of my dialogue." So I think it's just a great film. It's a great role for her because you really do get to see some of her natural wit and comedy that she had. I mean, there's a wonderful scene where she's playing with some of the animals and she actually falls, and she was kind of looking over at John Ford, the director, and like, are you going to cut this out? Because I'm not doing, the scene isn't going quite right, but they kept rolling. And it's one of the most charming parts of the movie where she's kind of fumbling with this baby elephant. But she just brought so much naturalness. We use the word earthiness for her a lot, but it's an appropriate word. But that role in particular really captured what she was probably like to some degree off camera in terms of just the wit, the delivery, the just the naturalness, being kind of down to earth and that kind of thing. And it's just a fun role. And she ultimately really enjoyed making the movie. She had some conflicts with John Ford at the beginning of the film, but they softened to each other, and by the end of it were very, very close. And she had worked with Clark Gable 2 other times, so they had a natural rapport with each other. And just a neat little side story is that she saw the movie Red Dust when she was a little girl with her mother. Her mother's favorite film star was Clark Gable. And she told her mom after seeing it, "I hope I can be in movies one day with Clark Gable." And then fast forward to 1952 when they're filming the remake of Red Dust, and she's getting to be in this movie with Clark Gable, again, their third pairing. But they were great friends, and she met Grace Kelly for the first time on this movie, and they quickly hit it off and stayed lifelong friends, kept a correspondence. She went to the wedding in Monaco and all of that. They were very, very close. So this, all in all, this was a very positive experience for her. And it shows through in the performance, I think. For today, for my dish, I made a very traditional, well, what has become a very traditional Southern dish, although it has roots back in Native Americans actually created this dish. It's called Succotash, and the traditional means of making it is with corn and some sort of shell bean, typically lima beans. In the South, we call baby lima beans, which are the very small little green ones. We call those butter beans. But butter beans and lima beans are the same thing. There's just a lot more variance in lima beans, different sizes, different colors, and all of that. But this is a super easy dish, and I gotta say, it's scrumptious. If you like those beans. If you don't like lima beans or butter beans, you can substitute another shell bean. You can also add onions to this dish, or tomatoes, or potatoes. It's kind of, this dish really kind of was very popular when Ava was a child. She grew up on a farm, and her family had a large garden, about an acre, that it was kind of their garden as well as people in the community, and they would share things. And when you would cook a big pot of corn and then a couple days later cook a big pot of lima beans, you'd have little bits of leftovers. So what they would do is put the two together and make succotash. So that was a great way of, using your leftovers creatively. When I made it today, and I'll show a little shot of it, here's what it looks like. I did it with the lima beans or butter beans and corn. I also added just a few sauteed onions to the top of it and a little bit of fresh herbs for some additional color. And but really easy. You cook your two beans, you put them in a bowl, you stir them up, and you serve it. That's all you have to do. So it's a great dish for the summer, especially when all of these vegetables are in season. So there you go.
And Laura, as we talked about last week, this year is Ava's centennial year, and the 100th anniversary of her birth is coming up December of 2022. The museum will be celebrating in high style throughout the year. So remind people of the URLs where people can follow the information and join in the celebration.
Well, I appreciate you teeing that off for me, Carrie. I appreciate all the support that you've shown, and this whole wonderful community that you've created around Hollywood Kitchen. Yes, Ava Gardner would have turned 100 on Christmas Eve of 2022, and we are celebrating her wonderful life, legacy, and all the many facets of her complex character and her journey through life through the kind of moniker of Ava 100. We're kicking it off with a festival at the Ava Gardner Museum in Smithfield, North Carolina on October 7th. The long weekend 7th through the 9th, we're going to have screenings. We're going to have a heritage tour that goes around and shows you some of the local sites that were affiliated with Ava during her lifetime and childhood growing up in North Carolina and on her visits home. She's also buried there, so her grave site will be part of that tour. We're going to have some special exhibits that we're debuting. We're working on some special guests and a few other special surprises that unfortunately I can't announce yet, but hopefully if they all come together, everybody's going to be really excited. But that's going to kick off a year's worth of celebration. We're going to do some special programming around her actual birthday, closer to closer to Christmas Eve. And then we're going to have kind of special things, product announcements, and all sorts of wonderful things that we're working on in conjunction with the Ava Gardner Trust, which is the charitable entity that's managed by her family. They're the co-trustees of the trust, and they do official licensing and all that sort of stuff. So there's just all kinds of wonderful things percolating under the surface that I can't quite share yet, but I'm close. So stay tuned to avagardner.org and follow, that's the website. And we've got all kinds of wonderful information there, as well as a really extensive blog with all kinds of wonderful articles and information about her life. A lot of things most people don't know. And then we are on all the social media channels. So Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, all of that. So please follow us along and join in the conversation. And if you've got a question, ask me, because I'm on social too. So I'll be happy to direct you in the right place. And some of you at least better come see me come October or December. I need my friends there with me so we can all celebrate in high style.
I plan on being there for Christmas with Ava, and I'm hoping we have like an Ava Gardner cook along in person. We can just cook up a storm.
I love this.
Like
I love
everything.
this idea. I love this idea, Carrie. I think we need to make this happen. I think we can pull something together for this.
Go.
So any questions about Ava?
It's not a question. I'd like to interject a story about Ava.
Oh, I was hoping you had one. I'm excited. Tell me.
We were both under contract to MGM. And I had known since I was a very little girl. And she was of the bayous. She swam like a fish. But I grew up in the era of the glamour girl, the it girls of Hollywood, the most beautiful women in the world. Ava was the most beautiful natural beauty of anyone I've ever seen. She would dive in the water. She would jump up, like this, sort of squeeze a little, take a towel, wrap a towel around it, squeeze it, take it and run her fingers through it and take a comb. She looked more beautiful than I ever looked 4 hours later after a beauty salon appointment. She was so naturally beautiful.
Oh, that's so great to hear. Did you spend time with her or get to,
Oh,
you know,
what
make
a
it
lot of
first-
time with her. And she was as sweet inside as she was beautiful on the outside. She was a wonderful lady, very kind.
Well, that's just so great to hear. I mean, you know, I never got to meet her, but love reading about her and writing about her. And I work a lot with the museum's team to kind of write content for the website. And I've gotten to know some of her family members, some of who knew her quite closely and are named after her. And they are just a wonderful family, a wonderful group of people. And they speak about her, you know, so much in the present and talk about those same attributes. So it's wonderful to hear other people who knew her professionally or in that setting also kind of reinforce that, because I think she's great. And I'm very proud to be able to share parts of her story and be involved with the museum. So thank you so much for sharing that, Sue. That's just lovely.
Thank you so much for letting me.
And thank you
And
guys.
it's
Toast to Ava. Toast to Ava Gardner, who should have won an Oscar and didn't, and that stinks. Yes, to Ava.
To Ava.
All right. Next, we have Miss Krista Lawler joining us. She is a Hollywood Kitchen regular now as well. And she is going to present a star that I really think warrants so much discussion here. And that is Miss Dorothy Dandridge. So Krista Lawler, take it away.
Okay. Hi again. I'm just going to start with a quote from Harry Belafonte about Dorothy. She was the right person in the right place at the wrong time. Now, I do feel like for Carmen Jones, she should have gotten the Oscar, but she had a lot of competition that year. In 1955, she had Grace Kelly for The Country Girl, which won. Judy Garland, The Star is Born. And in Donald Boggle's book about Dorothy, he stated that Dorothy didn't think she was going to win. She thought Judy was going to win. Audrey Hepburn for Sabrina, Dorothy, of course, and Jane Wyman for The Magnificent Obsession. While reading about her and learning more about her, I learned things like she was one of the first people that was actually in the actors lab. And that's where she met Marilyn Monroe. She also met Anthony Quinn. And when she was at the actors lab, she danced with Anthony Quinn, and I guess caused quite a stir in Hollywood. But when she first started out, she was part of the Dandridge sisters with her sister Vivian and Etta Jones. One of their first movies was The Big Broadcast of 1936. Trying to think of what else. She was one of the first triple threats. She could sing, she could dance, and she could act. She worked with the Nicholas brothers in the Sun Valley Serenade, the Chattanooga Choo Choo song. Yeah, that was just one of my favorite performances of her. And she was so young. You could see she was so young. But she ended up marrying Harold Nichols from the Nicholas brothers then. Trying to think of what else. I'm trying to condense it down.
There's a lot to say, Krista, so that's all right.
There is. Just because there's not a lot put out about her, and it's kind of sad. But I guess I'll just, instead of just jumping through all of that, I'll say that she did break a lot of rules though in Hollywood. Just because she didn't get an Oscar does not mean anything. She was the first Black woman featured on the cover of Life magazine, which was huge. November 1st, 1954. She was the first African-American nominated for a leading role. And that's both actor and actress. She was the first. She was the first African-American to present an award at the Academy Awards, which was for film editing, and it won to On the Waterfront. She was the first Black performer to open at the Empire Room inside the Waldorf Astoria. And another thing that I found really interesting to correlate to the other people that have already presented, she really got along well with Ava Gardner and Marilyn Monroe. Matter of fact, both they would like give each other advice, like I would say like acting advice. But I guess maybe I'll just say some other things to watch of hers besides Carmen is I liked Island in the Sun. It was one of the first films that really showed a interracial relationship. They weren't allowed to kiss, but it did show an interracial relationship between the two. I was able to watch a very choppy version of the Porgy and Bess, but I did enjoy it quite a bit. I'm trying to think of what else. I don't want to go too long. She ended up having a child. She ended up having one child with Harold Nicholas, and the child is basically has what we call Down syndrome now. And I kind of know what that's like to be a mother of somebody that has an intellectual disability is that. And I felt like I kind of related to her because of that, because it's immensely hard. So everything that she did for that child, for its care, for it not to become a ward of the California state. Unfortunately, by the time she had to file bankruptcy, she didn't have a choice. But that really tore her up. And I think that was a lot of what caused a lot of the inner turmoil in her, because she just, it hurt her. All she wanted to do was be like Cora Sue wanted to be, a mom and a wife, and not necessarily have to act. So that was really hard on her. And I guess we made, and this is so good, it's called the Dorothy Dandridge Emotional Omelette. Now, in the instructions I was sent, I didn't know if I had to put it in the middle of the omelet, so I put it on the top because it says there's a sauce. But it is like a sauce, and it is amazing. But it is so good. Like my mom and my husband are already like, well, can we have some? Because it is really good. But it's just basically, well, I'll share it. It's a huge recipe, but I'll share it again later. But I guess I'll take it away. I guess I'll end on the note that Dorothy said in her autobiography with Earl Mills. Prejudice is such a waste. It makes you loggy and half alive. It gives you nothing. It takes away.
Krista, thank you so much. That was very powerful, and I appreciate that. I did want to add that it's interesting that Halle Berry would go on to play Dorothy Dandridge in an HBO movie, and then Halle Berry would win the Best Actress Oscar 20 years ago, I think this week, making her the first and sadly so far only African-American Best Actress Oscar winner. And this year marks Dorothy Dandridge's centenary too. And I was doing a little research the other day, and I found out they did a whole spread about Dorothy Dandridge cooking in Ebony magazine in the 50s. So I'm trying really hard to get a hold of that magazine. I wrote Ebony, don't know if I'll hear back yet, but and they talk about her baking coffee cake. So I kind of feel like a standalone Dorothy Dandridge episode is completely warranted, and I'm going to try to make that happen later this year.
Now, Donald Bogle said that she loved cooking like Southern food, like chitlins and all that other stuff, even though she was born in Cleveland. It's so interesting. You bring up introducing Dorothy Dandridge, which Halle Berry was in. It's so interesting because there's a scene in that film where she's meeting Earl Mills, who will be her future manager. And there's 3 girls underneath this piano, okay? And they're all sitting there and he's following this person singing, and it's Dorothy. But there's Dorothy, there's Ava, and there's Marilyn, and they're all together. And I'm like, oh, wouldn't it just to have been the fly on that wall, just to see that was amazing, because all of them just had this really, just were gorgeous. They didn't have to do anything to be gorgeous.
Can you imagine if they'd gotten to make the movie, all 3 of them together in Technicolor? Can you even fathom the possibility of that?
There would be too much beauty on the screen. There'd be too much.
The couldn't handle such things.
Yeah.
Krista, I think that you and Benjamin and I should get under a piano sometime and toast the 3 of them in honor of that.
I'm not singing. I'm not singing.
I was going to ask what your impression was of introducing Dorothy Dandridge, having, done the research and read and watched her films, how you felt that movie captured.
I loved it, but it was more based on the book that Earl Miles did, which was her prior manager before she passed away. And I don't know, they made it, there a lot of things that revolve around her revolves around her death, unfortunately. And I think people like to over dramatize that a little bit. Like, so that's the only thing I didn't like about it. I liked the story until the end. Yeah.
And for those watching, if you have never seen it, Carmen Jones is fantastic. I was so lucky. The first time I ever saw that was on 35mm at the UCLA archive. It practically blew my socks off. It was just unbelievable to see that for the first time on a huge screen. So even if you don't have the big screen opportunity, seeing that movie will just stun you if you are new to the world of Dorothy Dandridge.
I gotta share one other thing too. She, Otto Preminger was not going to cast her as Carmen. He did not have her in mind. She said that she was too sex Fifth Avenue. So she went to Max Factor and they did her up, put her in red makeup, got a little red rose in her hair, and then this outfit. Now mine's flip-flop, but anyways, she came in there and went into his office and looked at him carrying a rose. And he said, "There's my Carmen." And that was it. She got the part, but he wasn't going to originally. He was just like, she's too, because she wore, when she did the club act, she was all ball gowns and just dripping in expensive sexuality. There you go.
Well, thank you, Krista, so much. This is a wonderful presentation, and we're going to definitely do more Dorothy Dandridge in the future. Now, next up is Mary Stanford. Mary Stanford is also a frequent Hollywood Kitchen guest, a personal friend and collaborator that helps me make a lot of this stuff happen behind the scenes. And she's here to talk about Peter O'Toole, who was so sadly Oscar denied. So, ladies and gentlemen, Mary Stanford.
Thank you, Carrie. Hi, everyone. Hey, yes, I'm here to talk about the great Peter O'Toole. It's not just Peter O'Toole, it is the great Peter O'Toole. And I'm going to start with my recipe. So I thought about first making ratatouille in honor of his appearance as the food critic in the awesome animated movie Ratatouille, which is near and dear to my heart as a foodie. But I thought, no, we are gonna make a traditional Irish recipe in honor of his Irish roots. And I'm gonna make it right now for everybody. Here we go, okay. So first off, we start with the traditional bottle of Guinness. We use our official Guinness opener. see if I can do that. I'm gonna do that over here so I don't get out my microphone. Whoops, we try to do that. Hang on. It's hard to do on this angle. Okay, there we go. Woo, you hear that? All right, now, this is the tricky part. We take our Guinness glass, we turn it so, and we do this. And there we go. A traditional Irish recipe in honor of Peter O'Toole. One that he would definitely have approved of and appreciated. I'm gonna put that down because with Guinness, you gotta let it settle. If you don't know that, we have all of the lovely bubbles here, the foam as it is, so it actually just needs time to settle before you drink it. So we're not gonna rush into anything, which gives us plenty of time to talk about Peter O'Toole and his 8, count them, 8 Oscar nominations. Before I do that though, I do wanna just say that I made a joke about Peter O'Toole with his drinking and pouring out a Guinness, but alcoholism is a very real thing. And Peter O'Toole's alcoholism did hurt people, hurt himself, hurt his career, hurt his family. And so, you know, we love him, we honor his career, but we do need to kind of have a warts and all conversation about him. And so certainly if you're out there and you're watching this and you're struggling with alcohol, please do get help. There's a lot of help available, and reach out and connect with that. Do not become like Peter O'Toole. Just admire his acting, and that will be enough. So 8 Oscar nominations, 1 honorary Oscar, which we think honorary Oscar, very nice, I guess. And that's kind of how he felt about it too. He actually tried to turn it down because he thought that once he got the honorary Oscar, he wouldn't be able to be nominated again for his actual performances. And he had every intention of continuing. And in fact, he got the honorary Oscar and then he was nominated again. So let's go through this list and ask ourselves how it is possible that Peter O'Toole never won an Oscar. So his first one was in 1963 for Best Actor, actually all of these were Best Actor, for Lawrence of Arabia. And he lost to Gregory Peck for his performance in To Kill a Mockingbird. Right, exactly, Carrie. I mean,
What are you
that's
gonna do?
an equally iconic role, can't quibble with that. Gregory Peck, well deserved. Then in 1965, he was nominated again for playing Henry II, King Henry II in Becket, opposite Richard Burton, who was also nominated that year as Best Actor for his performance in that film. I think they split the vote is what happened because they were both super good in it. And the winner that year was Rex Harrison in My Fair Lady. Also a very good role. Maybe not Rex Harrison's best, but it was a solid role. It's delightful. It's iconic. Then again, 1969, he was nominated again for playing Henry II, again, in a different film, this time The Lion in Winter, opposite Katharine Hepburn, one of my favorite movies. He lost this time to Cliff Robertson for his performance in Charlie, which is based on the book Flowers for Algernon. That's the one where I start to go, hey, hang on a second, what is going on here? Oh, but there's more. 3 years later, he was nominated for Goodbye, Mr. Chips. And again, Richard Burton was nominated for his own film, Anne of a Thousand Days. They both lost again to John Wayne for his performance in True Grit. Okay, that's fair. 3 years later again, his performance in The Ruling Class, which if you've never seen it, it is delightfully unhinged. Peter O'Toole dances a Charleston and sings the varsity drag. Oh yes, you need to see this movie. It makes no sense, but he's wonderful in it. Lost that year to Marlon Brando for his performance in The Godfather.
What are you gonna do?
What are you gonna do? Back again, 1981 for The Stuntman. Guess who won that year? Robert De Niro for Raging Bull. These are all like decent people, right? Okay, 2 years later, 1983, he was nominated for My Favorite Year, which is a great performance where he plays sort of a Errol Flynn kind of character. It's so in his wheelhouse, it's delightful, it's wonderful, But Ben Kingsley won for his performance in Gandhi. Also an iconic performance. And also that year, I gotta say, Dustin Hoffman was also nominated for his performance in Tootsie and lost. So, you know, that's a pretty great, like, it's an honor to be nominated club. All right, then he got his Lifetime Achievement Award in 2002, which, as I said, he tried to turn it down, but no, he accepted it, and accepted it gracefully and gratefully, and everyone made a big fuss about him, which was wonderful. And then he came back and was nominated again in 2007 for his film, for his lead role in the film Venus, where he plays an aging actor. It's a beautiful performance and well deserving of the Oscar nomination. But the winner that year was Forrest Whitaker for his own equally beautiful performance in The Last King of Scotland. So there we go. I think Peter O'Toole doesn't have an Oscar just because he had some bad luck to be nominated against a lot of really other great, great actors. So, okay, so maybe you don't need an Oscar to be remembered as a great actor, because he certainly was. So I think of Peter O'Toole as a film star, but really a theater actor, that he was just this lover of theater, of Shakespeare, of the plays of Shaw, and that for all the films he made, he also went back to the stage, sometimes very successfully, and sometimes really unsuccessfully. He did a production of Macbeth in 1980 that is still considered to be one of the greatest flops of the English stage ever. It really was that bad, is my understanding. That it was sort of what happens when a star's ego is allowed to run the show, unfortunately, for our friend O'Toole. But at the same time, when he had directors who knew how to, you know, work with his big personality and steer it in the right direction, his performances could be absolutely epic and riveting. When one of his early performances was as Petruchio in The Taming of the Shrew, and there was, I mean, it wasn't filmed because they didn't really film things like that at the time, but there was an audio recording made for like radio. And it's staggering because his choices are so different from what most actors who play Petruchio do. So if you're not familiar with The Taming of the Shrew, Petruchio is the lead who comes in and says he's going to tame Catherine, this wild woman, and teach her how to be, you know, his wife, a decent wife. And oftentimes the actors will play it by sort of matching her anger and her fury with their own, and it just becomes two actors kind of roaring at each other. And he came in and did things just with a whisper. And it's riveting. And I also have to say that it is damn sexy. Like, you can understand why this woman would be like, oh, this guy's interesting. Okay, let's keep him around and see what's going on. And that's what I find so interesting about O'Toole's performances, is that he was so smart, and every choice that he made was thought through. Even though his life was wild, his acting was not. Like, it was, you know, it was dangerous, it was edgy, but he was always in control of his performances every single time. And he also was an author. He wrote 2 autobiographies. They may have been a ghostwriter in assistance, but I think it's definitely him talking. It's 2 volumes. They're both called Loitering with Intent, and the first one is called The Child, talks about his youth leading up to going to drama school. And then the second one is called The Apprentice, which talks about his years in drama school and his early career. And that book, The Apprentice, got me through drama school. I had it just constantly there, constantly referring to it, constantly feeling like, hey, I'm not alone in just slogging through this process and learning everything, because Peter O'Toole has gone through this. Many great actors have gone through this. And I love that book. It's really wonderful, really lively. He was a great storyteller. What else? Oh, so in addition to the films that I've talked about that he was nominated for, if you haven't seen them, you should go see How to Steal a Million, which directed by William Wyler, where he co-starred opposite Audrey Hepburn. It's a lovely romantic comedy. He should have done more of those because he was just delightful. And The Last Emperor, where he had a supporting role. It's a wonderful film, Oscar winner, I think. And his performance in it is very understated and very controlled and very beautiful. And of course, Supergirl. We all must see Supergirl.
I noticed that one thing that stays with me about Peter O'Toole is how beautiful his voice was. There's certain performers, if they picked up a box of cereal and read the ingredients on the cereal, I would be like, like hanging on every single word. He falls into that category. He could utter any sentence on earth and I would be transfixed.
I got to meet him at one of the film festivals, and he shook my hand and said, "It's a pleasure to meet you." Oh, it was wonderful.
And I'm sure you believed that it was a great pleasure, right? Because he could say anything and make you believe it.
Yes, that's right.
Yes. Yes.
I was going to ask you, Mary, what role of his where he was not nominated do you think he should have been? And just as an aside, The Last Emperor.
The Last Emperor.
I think he's fantastic in that and in that supporting role. And I've always hated that he wasn't nominated for it. But are there others?
No, I would say The Last Emperor for sure. I think for a lot of his films, he was nominated for them. And like I said, I think it's just bad luck that he never won. Yeah, I think he should have been nominated for Best Supporting Actor for The Last Emperor, and I do think it probably would have changed the trajectory of the later part of his career if he had actually been nominated or won for those supporting roles. Because I think, we can see people like Christopher Plummer, who was a friend of his, Michael Caine, who was also a friend of his. And that's what happened for them, is that they moved into those older supporting roles and found a lot of success. And I think there would have been room for O'Toole in there too. But it just never quite happened. So he was a leading man for his whole life.
I completely agree. And I'll just say, I know it's probably not in the tops, but I love him in King Ralph. I love
King Ralph too. Oh my God, I love that movie. It's such trash, but it's such a fun movie.
It totally is. So I vote for him for that too. That was great.
Yeah, I think he's fun in everything. Even like the really bad movies, I think he has, like, he knows they're bad, and he just has a good old time, like showing up and doing his job and being ridiculous, and you gotta respect that man.
Absolutely.
Well, Mary, that was excellent. Thank you so much for that wonderful Peter O'Toole tribute. And now, Christina Rice and her daughter Gable, they have presented on Hollywood Kitchen before several times on The Great Anne Devorak. Last year, they presented on Clark Gable on the Cook-a-thon. Gable has a special clause with me. She does not want to do Hollywood Kitchens unless she can make a chocolate cake. So I did find her a new chocolate cake recipe per her contract with Hollywood Kitchen. And so without further ado, Christina Rice and Gable presenting about child actress Jane Withers.
Okay, so yeah, we're really presenting about Jane Withers' chocolate cake because we actually don't know much about her, but we did make a chocolate cake. So we have actually eaten quite a bit of chocolate cake. It was fun. Are you going to eat chocolate cake now?
Yeah.
Okay, she's going to eat the piece that we cut off. This recipe was a lot of fun because it was a whole group of ingredients and absolutely zero cooking instructions. So we weren't sure how this was going to turn out. Gable, how did it turn out?
It's a bit dry, but the buttercream is good.
It's a bit dry. I have to thank my friend Daniel Nauman, who actually gave me a few tips. I was the recipe called for baking chocolate in hot water. And I was just going to use the hot water to melt the baking chocolate. And he said, no. You need to melt the chocolate first, and then you're using the water to create a syrup. So I think we did avert disaster. I did discover that when an old recipe calls for sweet milk, that is just milk, So thank you, internet, for steering me from using sweetened condensed milk, because that was my first. Well, certainly that means, but why would I put that in a cake? So the recipe did not call for any kind of frosting. So we just made our favorite like chocolate buttercream icing. And you're enjoying this. So it is a little bit dry. We will end up consuming the entire cake. And I feel like I learned a lot about old-timey recipes when we guessed at the baking time, and we did it at 350 because that's when we usually bake cakes at, and we did it for, I think I did it for about 35 minutes, but I think it turned out okay.
It's so funny because when you told me Gable's contract now requires a chocolate cake, I was kind of frantically trying to find an Oscar-worthy person that had a chocolate cake recipe that was vintage that y'all could talk about. And I felt bad when I sent you the Jane Withers like spread from the magazine, because I was like, yeah, there are zero instructions at all. And then it was like, how does it compare to the Clark Gable cake that you guys made last year at this time?
It does not compare to the Clark Gable cake we made last year. Was the sour cream cake. That was so good that she actually requested it for her birthday.
Here's the instructions.
Oh, can we get to the end? No, those aren't, yeah, right there. So it's a whole bunch. So right there, that is it. So there's lots of other instructions for these other Jane Withers recipes right there. It's just that list of ingredients, and that is it.
My guess is they ran out of column space and they thought, oh, screw it, these people will figure it out.
Everybody knows how to make a cake. Yeah, the Clark Gable sour cream chocolate cake is fantastic, and we recommend it, and she did request it for her birthday.
Yeah,
so
that's my birthday. And
that is the superior cake recipe. I would be remiss if I didn't just talk about Anne Devorak for a slight second. So we've already done Anne so many times that we weren't going to do another Anne recipe. Of course, she is my choice for those who should have won an Oscar. I think she should have gotten hers for supporting for 1950s A Life of Her Own, starring Lana Turner, directed by George Cukor. I really think that's like Anne's tour de force performance. She's in the movie for about 10 minutes, and I think she is just the most striking thing. Unfortunately, I don't have much to say about Jane Withers. Danny, did you?
Danny and Cora Sue.
I know Cora Sue was friends with her, so I'm going to defer. I can talk about the cake, but I'm going to defer to Danny and to Cora Sue. Hi, Cora Sue, to talk a little bit about Jane Withers.
Well, I think we should turn it over to Cora Sue, since she was not only her friend, but her co-star. I'll just give a quickest of overviews because I love Jane Withers. And to me, she had like 5 at least separate careers. She started as a kid on the radio, I think in Atlanta, but then she got, of course, her big break in Bright Eyes with Shirley Temple as a great contrast to her. She also did great imitations of all the big stars and was acclaimed for that. And then had a series of her own movies. It was always my prayer, and I'm so sad that this will never happen now because she died. But she did come to the TCM Festival one year with Giant, which was wonderful and very poignant, telling her stories about her friendship with James Dean and working on that film, which was one of the first films she made after she had retired. But she had all these great, where she was the lead above the title child star that I wish they had shown. They're not as anywhere near as well known as Shirley Temple's, obviously. But then she retired, got married, had kids. Kate was lured back to do a wonderful, poignant role as Vashti in Giant, kind of retired again. And then, of course, people my age all knew her as Josephine the Plumber, which was a very lucrative gig she had for Comet Cleanser that she did for like 20 years. And she was so sweet. I talked to her a couple times, once on the red carpet at TCM. And I remember accidentally bringing her to tears because I mentioned one of my favorite child actresses, Virginia Wilder, who was a very close friend of hers, and who died very young when she was 40. And Jane just started crying and talking about her and the family. But she was famous for her parties that I'm sure Cora Sue was at. And then she also had this like teenage career. And I think, Cora Sue, am I right that you were in one of those films? Was it Johnny Doughboy or something?
Yes.
So what did you think? Did you get to go to those amazing parties where all the young people of Hollywood were at every year for her birthday?
I went to every one of them. We all waited for that. That was the party of the year, Jane's. And Jane was so exuberant. She just was clowning all the time. Such fun. Always acting up. She was adorable. And her parties were great fun. We loved them. They were costume parties. They were this or that. They were lots of fun. In fact, Dick Powell called and he said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm dressing the children. We're going to a costume party." He said, "May I go too?" And I said, "Of course." And I have photographs of us at Jane's party. And it was a costume party. And here are my children in, I don't know, cowboy clothes or something. And Dick and myself. But oh no, she had the best parties and she was the sweetest. Oh, by the way, she was a hoarder. She hoarded everything. You couldn't get in her house. You had to hold your tummy in, go sideways, and be very careful. She was
It had a huge doll collection.
tremendous.
Yes.
She always threatened to give me a doll, but she never gave me, which is okay. But I love Jane. In fact, Jane's birthday, my birthday is April the 19th. Jane's is the April the 20th.
Yeah.
And Shirley Temple's is April the 18th. All in a row. Shirley was a year younger, Jane was a year older.
We're going to need to celebrate your birthday soon, Cora Sue.
That's right.
Yes.
Excellent.
A very young
95.
95.
95.
I think a party is in order.
Yes. I was lucky enough to spend an evening with Jane Withers, and she was just like Cora said, just exuberant. But she did talk about her dolls too.
Oh, yes. And I gave a party with all the kids I'd worked with. And Jane came and she brought boxes of photographs. They were just wonderful. She shared with all of us. She was a wonderful lady.
Well, thank you so much, Christina and Gable and Cora Sue and Danny for the Jane Withers presentation. I appreciate that very much. Next, we have a new face to Hollywood Kitchen, and I'm so happy that she could join us today. We have Christie Putnam joining us from Texas. She is an expert on character actress Thelma Ritter, and who Thelma was nominated how many times, Christie?
6.
6 times, did not win, and darn well should have. So
She could have had a dinner. She could have had a dinner.
yes, would you like me to show the footage that you edited right now?
Sure. Mhm.
Okay, give me just a second, guys.
Okay.
All right. Christie was kind enough to edit some footage together for us to watch. So please pardon my messy desktop as we share the screen. Can you guys all see it? Okay.
Thelma Ritter's very first Oscar nomination was for All About Eve in 1951. She played Bertie Coonan. Her second nomination came in 1952 for The Maiden Season. Her third was with A Song in My Heart with Susan Hayward in 1953. Her fourth most important nomination came with Pick Up on South Street as Mo Williams. So those were 4 years, consecutive years, when she was nominated. In 1960, she was nominated for Pillow Talk as Alma, and in Birdman of Alcatraz is probably the most angry she ever is on screen.
Okay, so you've sent me that, and now we're gonna watch the chicken fricassee video, which you also sent me.
Okay.
All right, everybody see it?
This fabulous internet picture is the one that I hoped my chicken fricassee would look like when I finish. So I'll let you be the judge. I first started off with about a cup of sliced mushrooms and sauteed them in butter and added a little apple brandy, Calvados from the region of Normandy. Chicken fricassee obviously has to have some sort of fried chicken in it. But it's basically a stew. And so I decided I chopped up about a cup of carrots, about a cup of white onions, and about a half a cup of celery. And then I began sauteing that and adding a little butter and flour to make kind of a roux for the stew. Then I sliced up the chicken, dipped it in buttermilk and flour with some salt and pepper. I use black pepper and white pepper because I think it gives it a deeper taste. And once the chicken was fried, the mushrooms were sauteed. I added some apple brandy, a little bit more of milk, fresh parsley flakes, thyme, a little bit of garlic powder, and let that kind of simmer for a while. And this is what my chicken fricassee ended up looking like.
I've got to say, I am deeply impressed, and I really want to come over and eat your chicken fricassee.
Well, I kind of modified it because Thelma would make chicken fricassee. She often stayed at the Garden of Allah and had a villa with a kitchenette. And so the chicken fricassee recipe from the 50s really requires that you fry or saute the chicken with the skin on it. And I know that Thelma liked mushrooms. So if she was making this dish in a kitchenette, she probably would have done everything in one pot except saute the mushrooms separately because she liked mushrooms. She also probably would have had a little cottage cheese with some pineapple. So she wasn't a great foodie though. She was tiny. She was a very tiny lady. And, when she would cook for herself, when she was out in Hollywood working, she was out there without her family. She would be taken out to dinner by a lot of her famous celebrity friends, or if she were staying in because she had to get up early the next day, sometimes 5:30 if she had to have a perm. She would, make something simple like a steak and a salad or steak and mushrooms and chicken fricassee. And that was a very popular recipe in the 50s. But as far as the Frenchness of it, I mean, when you're making a chicken stew, a lot of times you just put in what you have. And so that's kind of what I did. I didn't have any white wine. Fricassee requires white wine, but I did have some Calvados apple brandy, so I added that.
Excellent. Now you are writing a full-length biography about Thelma Ritter.
I am indeed. I'm still working on it. I was blessed to come into a lot of research from several different people. And when I got that last year, I had to go back and revamp a lot of what I did about her 20s and the 50s and 60s because some interviews came to me, some diaries came to me. So there's a lot of information about her that is absolutely amazing. And here she was, a mother of 2 kids, a wife and a mother, and she had this bi-coastal kind of jet setter existence because they lived in New York. And so she would fly out to fulfill her contract in Hollywood. And like I said, she was close to quite a few people because everybody loved her.
Excellent.
They thought she was funny and cute, and yeah, she got taken around a lot, especially when people would find out she was in Hollywood kind of by herself and her family was back in New York.
When is your book coming out? Do you have any sort of publication date yet?
I was hoping to get it done by, say, turn in the manuscript by the end of the summer. I'm just not sure. It's just taken a while because I do have to work to keep the lights on.
I know that feeling all too well.
I'm not independently wealthy like everybody else.
No, I think we're all just keeping it together, believe me.
I think most of us are in that same boat with you. I look forward to this book very much because I love Thelma Ritter. Every time she comes on the screen, it's comforting to me because she was in so many movies, I think, and she had the roles that she played were just so engaging all of the time. So thank you for highlighting her. I love her in Rear Window. I think Rear Window is one of her best performances, and that role is so fun.
I did too, because I remember the first time I saw Rear Window, I was so in awe of Grace Kelly's beauty that I'm like, oh, Thelma Ritter's in it. Oh my God. And I got even more excited over seeing Thelma Ritter than I did Grace Kelly. So
Yeah, and if you look closely at Thelma in Rear Window, you look at the pattern on one of her outfits, you'll see little Band-Aids and safety pins. Nobody quite gets that. So I thought that was so cute to see that, because Edith had, took time to work with Thelma, and Thelma was close to Edith Head because Edith had dressed her in several films.
Wasn't Thelma Ritter a Oscar presenter, I think, when it came from
Yes.
New York, both New York
did.
and LA?
Yes.
I wish there would be a record of it, so I would love to see it.
There's a little snippet of it on YouTube, or there used
Okay.
to be. I haven't checked lately. But yeah, she was very excited about it. Plus, she was also in Hollywood when Paul Douglas emceed, and she was close to Paul Douglas and Jan Sterling, and was supposed to be a bridesmaid at the wedding, but she had to work that day.
Christie, I cannot wait for your book. I worship Thelma Ritter and everything. I had one question that maybe you could give us a little preview of that I always wondered. She's so amazing. She's actually one of my favorite characters, which is saying something in All About Eve as Bertie. And then the whole weird thing, how she kind of disappears like midway through the film. We never see her again. Do you know anything about that?
Well, a lot of people comment on, 1 minute she's there and then poof, she's gone. And that's really kind of the way from what I understand, that's how Joe wrote it. Mankiewicz wrote it. And but she did have a couple of other things that I believe were cut, but they were little scenes. And it's like that in Letter to Three Wives. She's there and then poof, she's gone.
I have to say the film noir lover in me would have loved to have seen her do something devious to sabotage Eve Harrington. I'm just saying.
I think that was definitely a possibility, but that was Eve's story had to be played out between Margot and Eve and Addison. So, yeah, and I'm definitely over the hump as far as getting the book done, but it takes a while. Like I said, I have to work, and I want to do right by her because a lot of the research that I got, I had to go back and double check, and some of it is quite amazing.
Well, Laura Gabriel, her Marion Davies book took 10 years, so it takes what it takes is the way I look at it. And Laura has a job too, but when it comes out, it will be worth that wait. So
and
us to pre-order.
And in this process, I always try to, I try to remember this kind of Spanish proverb that velocidad no me importa, adelante es adelante, speed is not important, just going forward is forward.
Well, thank you. And when this book comes out, we are going to do a standalone Thelma Ritter extravaganza of some kind to promote your book.
Okay, there's a couple more recipes out there that I think you might be interested in.
Yes, well, we will revisit that. Thank you so much, Christie. I'm so happy you said yes. Thank you.
I'm so happy I took the time to do this because it's always a pleasure. Always a pleasure.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Next up, we have Hollywood Kitchen regular contributor, my friend Danny Miller, who is going to do one of two combos today. Danny is going to talk about the Oscar snub combo of Judy Garland and James Mason for A Star is Born. So Danny, take it away.
Hey, hello everybody. To quote Sophia Petrillo, because we've been watching Golden Girls every night since Betty White died, picture it. Hollywood, California, Pantages Theater, March 30th, 1955. The entire world is watching the Oscars broadcast, and one thing and one thing only is assured, that Judy Garland is going to win for her amazing comeback performance in A Star is Born, George Cukor's A Star is Born. Everyone thought it. Her fellow nominees, Grace Kelly thought it. The beautiful Dorothy Dandridge thought it. It was just a fait accompli. And she was not there. She had just given birth to her third child, Joey Luft. She was in the hospital with an entire film crew there, waiting to get her live reaction. And she didn't win. Grace Kelly won. I have nothing against the beautiful and talented Grace Kelly, but I'm sorry, I always call it the Charlize Theron Award because I think she's good in The Country Girl, but she was playing an unglamorous, although frankly, let's be honest, she's still gorgeous in the film, but she was playing a very unglamorous, difficult role. And there were other reasons we can get into why I think Judy didn't win at the end, even though I don't think there was ever a more shocking upset, frankly, than that. And I'm really sad for it. And of course, then the whole crew just left poor Judy Garland sitting there in her hospital room. But I really think she deserved it. And I think one of the problems was that also at the Pantages months earlier, The Star is Born had the premiere to end all premieres in 1954. And it was the 3-hour version that had been cut down from even more than that by George Cukor, but it was a really solid film. And then Warner Brothers freaked out and started just slashing it. George Cukor wasn't around, and I guess he didn't have the right to object. But when they were finished with it, they cut, what was it? I think almost an hour out, which made it much less intelligible. And even though Judy Garland was still fantastic, and so was James Mason, in my opinion, it kind of ruined the film. And there were other factors in Hollywood too, but I really think that Oscar was stolen from her. I don't blame Grace Kelly. I'm sure she was thrilled to win, but I wouldn't be surprised if she herself thought, why am I getting this award? Judy Garland had gotten a honorary juvenile Oscar in 1940, and she was nominated again a few years later. Also, I forgot who won that year she was a favorite to win for Judgment at Nuremberg.
I think Rita Moreno won that year, actually.
Who did?
I think Rita Moreno won that year.
Oh, okay. Well, I would allow that. But anyway, that was a big disappointment. And ironically, in A Star is Born, she wins the Oscar. Vicki Lester wins the Oscar. And it also includes, for my money, one of the most traumatic, shocking, I still gasp out loud when drunk Norman Maine, played by James Mason, interrupts the Oscar ceremony, and as he's gesticulating, accidentally slaps Vicki Lester, holding her Oscar across the face. It's a shocking moment. It's beautifully acted by both of them. He was nominated too, but to be honest, I can't begrudge Marlon Brando for winning for On the Waterfront. I mean, let's be real. I think he should have been nominated a couple years later for Bigger Than Life, which I think was an amazing film with our good friend Barbara Rush as his terrified wife about addiction, and he never won. I think he should have. He was not the first choice. I believe Ruth probably knows this. Cary Grant was the first choice to play Norman Maine, but he turned it down for a couple of reasons. And James Mason was nowhere near the first choice, but I think he does an amazing job. And that movie just rips my heart out. It was restored, thank God, in 1983 as best as they could do. Ronald Haver, who was the film programmer at LACMA then and a preservationist, painstakingly, they found original stereo recordings of the soundtrack. So they slowly found all over the world bits and scenes that were there. I think they got all but 10 minutes, but they had the audio of it. So they did this technique, which, it's kind of iffy, but I'm glad it's there, of they had stills taken from the set for the scenes that are no longer in the film. And they just kind of zoom in on those stills as you hear the dialogue. But some of the musical numbers that were cut, I'm surprised George Cukor didn't, he might have raised a huge fuss. He was George Cukor, for God's sake. This was his first musical, his first Technicolor film. And it was completely, virtually destroyed by Warner Brothers. It's just an outrage. And I assume a lot of the Oscar voters had seen, many were probably present at the premiere when it was the full version, but that was taken from the theaters and replaced with this non-director or star approved version. And, she had been let go, or she parted ways with MGM 4 years earlier in a very sad, end to her amazing career there. After doing Summer Stock, and then she started Annie Get Your Gun. She was going to do Royal Wedding, and they, for all those reasons we don't need to go into right now, parted ways. And she hadn't made a film yet. And then with the help of her then husband, Sid Luft, they created this vehicle for her that obviously was based on the 1937 film with Janet Gaynor. That's also great. And I think it's one of the most, I mean, you need, if you watch it, I think mostly now, the only thing you will find is, thank God, the restored version. So be sure to watch that. She gets to win an Oscar in the film, but not in real life, except when she was a little girl and got the small one. So I made two things. Well, this James Mason recipe that I made, and I'm going to show it to you in a minute, is so bizarre. And I'm going to taste it. I haven't even cut into it yet, so you're going to see my reaction. But Judy Garland, 20 years earlier, had this recipe when she was a young star at MGM for this vegetable salad. And, you know, we've talked with Carrie many times about how, oh, these are, you know, a lot of these are press agents things. I don't know, something about this and the way she writes about it. She was a young girl. She hadn't made The Wizard of Oz yet. Makes me think she might have actually eaten this. She said it was her mother made it for her, and God knows they were always trying to get her to lose weight, so I wouldn't be surprised. But it has a really delicious homemade Judy Garland French dressing that we'll post the recipe, and I've made that. I'm gonna just shake it up. It's really good, better than bottled. And I'll just quickly put it together and tell you what it is. Start with romaine hearts. And then Judy says she loves it because it's colorful and it's delicious. She didn't like salads, but they found a way to make one that she loved. Some grated carrots. And there's a fun part of this recipe that she insists on, so I'm going to do it. 2 tomatoes that I got this morning, heirloom tomatoes at our farmer's market. Let's see, olives, which is more of a, I don't think people put olives in their salads that much these days. Let's see, green peas, very colorful. I'm gonna serve this to my family later. Celery and endive, which I love. I don't know if you guys eat endive much, but it's really a delicious kind of almost bitter leaf. And then you add the dressing that you've mixed in a jar, and that's delicious. It has oil and vinegar and garlic and lots of paprika, which makes it this color. And so I'm going to add it, but this is the part that Judy insists on. You may not mix this with a wooden fork and spoon. Let me see how she phrases it. I go out in the kitchen and whip it up by myself. Oh, I almost forgot something important. That is to mix the salad and the dressing together with your hands. It makes a big difference because when you use a wooden fork and spoon for mixing, you just can't feel where the dressing misses some part of the salad. And that is very important. When your hands are nice and clean, impeccably clean hands, it doesn't make any difference anyway. Here it is. Now be sure to try it, especially if you think you don't care for vegetable salads. This one is different, honest. So I'm gonna mix it with my hands. I think I have a paper towel here so I don't destroy my computer.
You're such a purist, Danny. God bless you.
I know. I mean, she made it a point to like really insist. So what am I going to do? It's beautiful, colorful, delicious. Make it tonight. Then let's move to James Mason. And I was so perplexed by this because it's a Mogan David pudding. Now, if any of you don't know, Mogan David is a kind of sickly sweet. I kind of like it because I'm Jewish and was raised with it, especially on Passover Seder's, which is coming. Sweet Concord grape wine. But why would James Mason make that? Well, I'm pretty sure it was probably inspired by his wife, Pamela Mason, who actually was Jewish. But this thing is crazy, and we'll put the recipe for this too. You start with 4 cups of stale bread, or you can even put some stale cake crumbs in there. And then you soak it in Mogan David wine, which is just weird. And then you kind of squeeze the wine out, add 3 eggs, you add raisins, almonds, a couple other ingredients. And this thing that came out, and you put it in like a tube thing, it weighs 75 pounds. And I'm kind of scared. The few people I saw online that have made it were like, ugh. And of course they say cook it for a full hour, but they don't tell you what temperature, typical of those recipes back then. But I'm going to cut it and show you. Ugh, it's kind of hard to cut. I'm going to use one of my prized possessions is I have an entire set of 1939 World's Fair silverware that Judy Garland and Mickey Rooney were at. So I thought it was appropriate. But I'm going to lift a piece. You can serve it warm with like a hot sauce, or you can have it cold with whipped cream, which I don't have. Here it is. Look at that. That is so bizarre. All right, here we go. Okay. It's a bread pudding. It's kind of good. The Concord grape adds something to it. I like it.
Wow, I'm surprised because I was a little worried about this one. I got to be honest.
But I mean, the thing is, you could like it's a hockey puck. So,
stop.
My God, actually, I really like it a lot. All right, that's going to my family tonight too. I was all prepared to like, oh, how can I throw away this huge thing? But anyway, you know, as we know, and it's also Judy Garland Centennial this year in June. TCM is honoring her and Doris Day for their centennials this year. God, they should be doing.
I'm working on centennial episodes of Judy Garland and Doris Day as well. Those are in the works behind the scenes around here, just so you know.
Perfect. And not to be self-promoting, but I worked on a book with Meredith Ponadell called About Face. That's about her aunt Dottie Ponadell, who was a very close friend of Judy Garland's. That was published a couple years ago. You can find that online, and it's a lot of it is first-person anecdotes from Dottie, who died years ago, but was very close friend. She did her makeup from Meet Me in St. Louis through the end of her MGM career. Then unfortunately Dottie had MS and couldn't work with her on A Star Is Born, but like consulted about these other films. But anyway, what comes through loud and clear in that book is what an amazingly loyal, wonderful friend Judy Garland was to everyone in her life. Fun loving. There's hysterically funny stories of them taking, trains on press tours together. They were very close. So, yes, Judy Garland had some troubled parts of her life, but certainly, but she was a wonderful person, as her 3 children would and have often attested to, despite her problems. And obviously a brilliant actress, but I don't think she was ever, truly honored enough for. She did win a Golden Globe, so did James Mason, thank God, for A Star Is Born. I don't think she was at that ceremony either, but I'm glad she got that at least, but she was really crushed and very hopeful. I wonder, if she and Grace Kelly ever had a conversation after that, what that was like. Again, I'm sure she didn't hold it against Grace Kelly personally, but I think there was some anti-Judy thing in the industry with some of the people that maybe, she'd held up their production a little bit, or I don't know what the reasons are. And I definitely don't think the Warner Brothers, horrible editing of that film helped anything at all. But at least we can watch it now in its full glory. And, look, if we were in that time period, you would think, and certainly if she'd won the Oscar, it probably would have happened more likely, that would have started this whole, she was only like, I think 31, even though in our minds, because she'd been around for so long and had left MGM finally, you think, what is she, 50? She died at 47 years later. So you would have hoped that would have started a whole new career. And she did make some other really good films, including, I Could Go On Singing, and then she was in the animated, she was the voice in Gay Paris with Robert Goulet, and was always excellent. And of course, then there was the infamous Valley of the Dolls, where she was supposed to play the Susan Hayward character and had started filming, and you can see the costume tests and stuff. But anyway, I'm sorry that I do believe that this snub, and usually I would just call it, well, they chose, I can't believe Peter O'Toole didn't win for Lawrence of Arabia. If there was ever an Oscar-winning performance, that was it. But so Gregory Peck was fantastic too. But in this case, no, she was robbed. She should have won that damn Oscar. I want to steal it from the Grace Kelly estate and send it to Liza Minnelli or something. That's the one that enrages me the most. There's a couple, but the Judy Garland not getting it, and I can only imagine the hush over the audience. At least they got to watch gorgeous Grace Kelly, who was there, come up and take her award. Of course, no longer looking like the dowdy wife of Bing Crosby, but one of the most beautiful women who ever walked the earth. So, yay, Grace Kelly, but, and then she leaves it all anyway and marries Prince Rainier. No, Judy should have gotten that damn Oscar. It stinks, to quote Carrie in the slogan for this thing. So,
and also, Penny, we would be remiss if we did acknowledge. Now, a while back, I went over to your beautiful house and we did a whole Anna May Wong episode. And I want to briefly discuss how much that whole situation stinks too, because much like Dorothy Dandridge, Anna May Wong was stunningly gorgeous, insanely talented and brilliant, and had the misfortune to be around at a time when racist attitudes held back what should have been a stellar career. And
I'm glad you mentioned that, because
Yes,
I think
yes.
Anna May Wong's niece, who we had on the show, is watching, and they just announced the most exciting feature film, A-list, amazing thing, being written by David Henry Wang and starring Gemma Chan, about Anna May Wong, which her niece Anna Wong is consulting on. But yeah, the fact she desperately wants, she's fantastic. They just had a film festival of hers at the Academy Museum. I went to all of them. Anna was there, and they were just extraordinary. The Silence, Pavement Butterfly, they were amazing. Of course, Shanghai Express with Marlene Dietrich. But she desperately advocated for the lead role, and Pearl Buck wanted her for the lead role in The Good Earth. Duh. You know, I mean, she was like the only and most famous Chinese actress, American actress in the world. And they wouldn't give it to her because the male lead was being played by Paul Muni. And one of the reasons was, well, we can't have an actual Chinese actress kissing Paul Muni. I mean, it's the most hideous story ever. And they gave it to Louise Rayner, who, you know, I'm sorry, no, especially now that, I mean, you know, I remember seeing her at the festival, in the first festival with it. It was exciting to see her, but especially now that I'm friends with Anna Wong, I'm not even allowed to say anything nice about Louise Rayner because she had no business in that part. Possibly the only worst one was Katharine Hepburn in Dragon Seed. Thank God those days are over. But Anna May Wong, you know, and just to, I'll go off this in a second, but in that Ryan Murphy thing, some of which I really liked, Hollywood, a couple of years ago, and they have this alternate world where Anna May Wong wins the Oscar. It's for a different film, which I don't like, because like that's not reality. And you know, she should have won. I hope Gemma Chan wins an Oscar for playing her. That'll be some justice. But you know, people are even calling Anna and saying, "Oh yeah, your aunt won that Oscar. Do you have it?" Like, no, that was fiction. Real life was bigoted and prejudiced in those days, that they wouldn't let her play, and they offered her a role of a concubine in the film, and she said, sorry, no. So yes, okay, you're right. Judy Garland and Anna May Wong, even though she didn't even make the film that she should have won the Oscar for, but someone else did that shouldn't have. So those are my two for sure.
Yes, I just would be remiss if we did not bring her up today. I felt like that had to happen, absolutely.
Thank you.
All right, Danny, thank you. Next up, we have our second combo presentation of today. We have Miss Ruth Munsak, who, surprise, surprise, is going to talk about her beloved Cary Grant, and also the woefully underrated and un-Oscared Jean Arthur. So Ruth? Ruth? Where's Ruth? Oh, there you are. Hey, Ruth.
Hi, everyone. Happy Oscar Sunday. So good to see everybody, all these familiar faces. And some of these faces I'm going to be seeing in Hollywood very soon. So that's going to be a great treat for all of us. Today, I did Cary Grant's barbecue sauce. But let's note that a lot of the times these recipes that are attributed to these actors, they have nothing to do with. The history of this particular recipe, it is the National Barbecue Champion won the barbecue sauce of that year. And Cary Grant just really liked the barbecue sauce. And so it's kind of come that it's his sauce. But he even says, if you don't like it, you know, sorry, but it's just my taste. And I made it, and it was really yummy. And the chicken is in the oven. I have, so it calls for a cut up chicken. I'm a fan of chicken thighs because it's just got good flavor. So you season them up, you put them in the pan, you brown them. I put them in a baking dish. I prepared the sauce, ketchup, A1, Worcestershire, salt and pepper, garlic and onions, apple cider vinegar, a little bit of water, and you get that on the stove in a saucepan, and you get that going. And then after it gets a good boil on, you mix 2 tablespoons of cornstarch and 2 tablespoons of water, and you get a little nice, almost liquidy pasty. And then you start to slowly drill that into the boiling sauce, stir it up, and you get a really nice consistency of barbecue sauce. So that was really fun. So I lined up the chicken and put it in the pan after I browned it. And then I poured the sauce liberally over it, aluminum foiled it, and an hour and probably about an hour and 15, hour and 20 at 325. And I've got about 14 minutes left. So you guys will probably be able to see the finished product. And everyone knows I'm a huge Cary Grant fan, so I know no one is stunned I'm doing this recipe. But I also am a huge barbecue person. I love barbecue. And to have a sauce, a go-to sauce that you could make that is really simple, not a lot of ingredients, and it's almost everything anyone has in their cupboard or refrigerator as far as onions and garlic go. So I highly recommend it, and I'm looking forward to the finished product. I'm again with my friends Paul and Carol in their lovely kitchen, and we're going to enjoy the chicken with some baked mac and cheese. I'm a huge fan of mac and cheese, and today I'm making a version of from Monticello that Thomas Jefferson's kitchen used to make. And so the key to that is boiling the pasta with milk and water combined. And that helps to make the sauce and whatnot. So we're going to have that. They're responsible for the salad and some greens for the rest of the dinner. And so we'll be showing you guys pictures of that later. And a little bit about Cary, because he did not win an Oscar, and he has lots of roles, and he could do a lot of things from comedy to pratfalls, drama. He could definitely bring you to tears. And he could make you fall in love repeatedly over and over and over again. One of the best dressed men to me, even at this far in time, he is still one of the best dressed men in all time. He could wear a suit or a pair of jeans, but no one could wear a tuxedo quite like he would wear a tuxedo. I envision, when he would walk in the room, people would be like, oh my God, even men would gasp, or like, damn, great, she won't be talking to me later. So I just have this huge crush on him. That's probably why I'm still single, is because, no guy I'm going to meet is ever going to meet up to that. So if they're doomed, I'm doomed, He was nominated for 2 Oscars, Penny Serenade, and he was with Irene Dunn in that. And I'm assuming all of you guys have seen it. It's an issue of, a husband and wife trying to have a child, because they lost a pregnancy during an earthquake. And so it goes on to talk about playing back in records about, that time of adopting her and all the things they were going through and the different records that they were playing and music that they were listening to at home. And I really like that. I resonate with it a lot because music is very important, and it's an accompaniment to our lives. I'm a 70s, 80s, where I really got into music and movies and things like that. And there's like a soundtrack to everyone's life, and at different times in your life too. And especially when you listen to music that you grew up with. And like, I'm a huge AC/DC fan. That puts me back in Pasadena, hanging out in the high school with all my friends, and, Bulldogs for life, that kind of thing. It can just take you right back there, where you were. So that's what they do with the music when she's playing the records and playing back their life. And the other thing about this movie is, in regard to the fact that it's based on this couple adopting this child, is I'm an adopted person myself. And so it's a complicated movie for me also, because adoption is very complicated. So I have a somewhat, I love it to death, and I don't. Sometimes I can watch it, and other times I cannot watch it, but it is a well done movie. Really well done. And he had some good competition that year. It was 1942 Oscars. So he had great competition, a good crowd. But, I think he's a star no matter what. He deserves an Oscar for everything, with the exception of that one that he did in Virginia, no, not Virginia, but there's a Spanish one with he and Frank Sinatra. Not my favorite movie, but I'd watch that, if there was nothing else to watch, I'd still watch it on a continuous loop. his second Oscar nomination was for None But the Lonely with Ethel Barrymore, Barry Fitzgerald. I didn't know Barry Fitzgerald had a brother. Did anyone else know that? Sometimes, because again, you know, we hear people who go down rabbit holes with these characters and find out all kinds of connections. That's a really great movie, very emotional, you know, mother and son, you know, each, you know, trying to hold their own, you know, and he wants to go out and, you know, and do his thing. He doesn't want to be stuck here, you know, and he's got, you know, big dreams of, you know, making it big for himself. And, but it's a really moving movie. And I remember when I first discovered it, because at first I was, you know, a lot of Cary Grant was the comedies, the romance and things like that. You know, that this was a really deep movie. And I was really surprised, you know, so then I just fell in love with him all over again. So then there's that. Then with Jean Arthur, one of his his co-star in 2 movies, Angels with No Wings, and The Talk of the Town. I love The Talk of the Town. Someone suggested I make borscht, and I was just like, well, you know, hey, no, I can't do all of that. But I do want to try it one day. Has anyone tried borscht? And
Yes.
yeah, so that's on my list of something to try one of these days. And Jean Arthur, to me, again, very talented, funny, gorgeous. I kind of think of her as this woman who like Katharine Hepburn, she made a decision about, you know, how she wanted, you know, her career to go and her life to go. And I feel like she was a really strong woman in that aspect. But she can just make me laugh when she realizes that, you know, she's got to stay in this house, and, you know, she's got Dills upstairs, you know, and she's just, you know, every moment of it is a fun movie, and she's really fun. And I also love her in More the Merrier. That scene of her and Joel McCrea on the stairs, and it's just majestic. You know, you don't see that kind of talent in Hollywood today, or maybe I just don't watch enough of Hollywood today. And I'm sure that there's some very talented people that I just haven't discovered to a certain extent, because I keep classic film on a continuous loop kind of all the time. So that's my gig. She had a tough year too with the nominees that she was up against, and Jennifer Jones, and, you know, won Joan Fontaine for the Constant Nymph, and then Ingrid Bergman for Whom the Bells Toll. I mean, oh my God, you know, and then Jennifer Jones, and then Greer Garson. I love Greer Garson. So it was a tough field for her, but I'm glad that, you know, we have things like TCM so we can continue to know them and honor them. And so to me, they're Oscar winners across the board, no matter what anybody says. So Jean Arthur, I don't really think of her as being a cook, but she has a fudge recipe that's attributed to her. And again, very few ingredients, lots of sugar and butter. And I threw in some pecans, and it says to continuously stir until it thickens to the point where you can barely move the spoon. So it's still cooling down now. Before then, I will put it in a little square Pyrex dish, and we're going to enjoy that with either a movie later, or we'll probably glimpse and see what's going on at the Oscars. I'm always fascinated to see what everyone is wearing, and maybe a little champagne.
Okay, opening the floor. Mary, do you have any thoughts?
You know, I actually, Ruth, I was struck when you said earlier that you were filling this out with the recipe from Thomas Jefferson's kitchen at Montecito, because we've been talking so much about overlooked figures and his chefs were definitely overlooked figures who we're just now starting to talk about.
Yes.
And that is James Hemings and later Peter Hemings, his brother. And if people don't know their story, like, I really hope even though we're all film fans here, go take a break from all the film history and go read up on them. Or if you like documentaries, there's a whole the documentary series High on the Hog on Netflix is wonderful.
Oh
and
my
there's a whole
God.
episode.
Oh my God.
Yeah. There's a whole episode, and it's
that's the rabbit hole I went down. I went down it, Yeah.
Yes.
And I like to cook and I love recipes. And cooking's our history too. That's how we care for one another. That's how you show your love is through cooking. My grandmother on my biological mother's side was a great cook, and a lot of my aunts were great cooks. And my cousins tell me about how she would just beat the batter for a cake, and she had these forearms, and and she, and they were good. Then she was strong enough to reach out and hit them too, And then my grandma Munsak, my dad's mom, she was a fabulous cook when we would go back to the farm. And I remember, before we left, Dad would have a haul of stuff that, she had canned and things like that after we'd spent, the summer on the farm. So food is very important. When people, they can't give you a gift, they can't buy you anything, but they can scrape together enough to make a meal and share it at your table. That means so much. People just don't do that as much as I think we should. And I was hoping that after, we kind of came out of this pandemic thing, that maybe we would share a meal together more, and not just in a restaurant, but, in each other's homes, so we can get to know each other better and, talk food and our history and our family's history. So I love this Hollywood Kitchen because it just brings classic film to another level for us. We have Kimberly Trueller that talks fashion with us, that marries fashion from then to now. You have Stephen C. Smith talking about music and the scores for all these movies that we love. And it's really cool now. I'm listening better, as I listen to the music. So I watch these movies, as we all do, over and over and over again. And each time we pull a different component out of it, and can study it and get to know that even better. And that's kind of the experience you also get when you go to the Academy. So I'm really thankful that Carrie always invites me to come and do this. And I have other stars I love too. It's not just Cary Grant, but I like the play of having them had a movie together, 2 movies together, and each never had won an Oscar. I think part of for Carrie's reason is that, he wasn't with any one studio completely. And I guess they didn't feel that the loyalty there. So if you're not going to be loyal to us and stick here, you're on your own, dude.
I think Barbara Stanwyck had the same problem.
Yes. Yeah. So
Ruth, how on earth did Cary Grant not at least get an honorary Oscar later on? Was he offered one? How did that happen?
Yes, he does. He does have a Lifetime one.
Oh, he does?
He ultimately got a Lifetime one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But he didn't win one competitively. And that's what this group is. I guess that's what our theme was, for today. Because Peter O'Toole got one and then got another nod and then still didn't get, But this is just such joyfulness to be able to get to know other people who have this passion for classic film, like I do, and to get to know the different aspects of it, and everyone's from different places. So that just endears me to everybody. It's like I can't wait for next month. I think we're 25 days, but I'm not counting.
That's right. And thank you. I just want to thank you too, Ruth, because you really helped me a lot behind the scenes. You filmed me and Wyatt McCrae at the McCrae Ranch. You've lugged equipment up Danny's driveway with me. So you've done quite a lot to help Hollywood Kitchen happen behind the scenes. So I have to give you like a heck of a lot of credit for your support. Actually, all of you have been like incredibly supportive, by the way, too. So
yeah, this is really fun. I shared this on my personal Facebook page to the tune of like 100 and some odd people. We're like, oh, this is so cool. They actually really think I'm going to be on television. And they're all like, Ruth's going to do her classic film thing because thank God there's somebody else that likes that stuff.
I would love to at some point have like giant Hollywood Kitchen dinner parties where we all like bring potluck or cook together. I've got so many ideas. It's just hopefully a matter of time. But can we see the Jean Arthur fudge, Ruth? Do you have that completed?
Oh, I have it all stirred up, and I'm still kind of stirring it.
Okay. Do you mind if we hop on to the next guest and maybe
Yeah,
you
hop on.
All right. Oh gosh, liquid
It's
chocolate.
nice and it's liquid
Oh.
chocolate with pecans.
I need that. I need that now.
I can freeze some and I'll bring it to you, girl.
All right. Let's move on though, because by the way, if Jane Campion does win tonight, this will mean the third woman to ever win a Best Director Academy Award. But we are going to talk about a woman next who was not only an actress, but also an incredible director, filmmaker, ceiling crasher, and all around amazing lady. And that is Ida Lupino. And the incredible Barbara Boyd Doss is going to present Ida Lupino and her cocktail meatballs.
Yes, I love Ida Lupino. I don't think she gets enough credit. I was kind of surprised. I guess I didn't realize she hasn't even been nominated. She never even got nominated. We hardly recognize female directors nowadays. So in the 1950s, 60s, of course, they weren't going to give her any credit for that. So it's very sad. And I don't think she got the credit that she deserved, but she's amazing. So just to give you a little background, because I don't think a lot of people know too much about Miss Lupino, born in England to a showbiz family that goes back, centuries, many generations, came over here, I think in 1933, had a screen test at Paramount, got a contract, but she was a little bit picky about what she wanted to play. So she said she spent a lot of time on suspension because she said no to the project she was offered. But they bleached her hair. They wanted her to be the English Jean Harlow. So they shaved her eyebrows, bleached her hair, did a lot of makeup. And so it really wasn't her. And so Hedda Hopper said to her once, do you really want to be an actress? And she said, well, I guess so. Well, get your hair back to natural color, get your eyebrows grown back, and, be an actress and go back to the roots. And so she did. And then, so we have the Ida Lupino that we kind of know with the darker hair and just the strong, wonderful female that we love. So that's pretty cool that she took that advice. She said, Hedda said, otherwise you would just be another starlet that goes by the wayside. So, so that was great. Let's see. So she loved being in Los Angeles, but she wasn't a studio player. She didn't play the game. And I think probably, as we've talked with some of the other stars, the ones who were more independent or weren't very loyal to a particular studio, I think that's probably didn't help her. But I think she should have won for some of her directing movies, the movies that she directed. They were amazing. Last night I watched The Bigamist and I watched The Hitchhiker. And wow, I mean, those are amazing. So she started a production company with her second husband, Collier Young. Even after they weren't married anymore, he married her best friend, Joan Fontaine. So very interesting backstory. But yeah, so they had this film called The Filmmakers, this production company, and they made several films. They co-wrote the screenplay, he produced, she directed, and they're incredible projects, just incredible. So hopefully, I haven't seen all of her work. I look forward to even seeing more, but I think she didn't get enough credit. There's a YouTube video of her presenting an Oscar to Joe Mankiewicz that I watched this morning, and she made a comment like, "I hope to be on a list like this," after she read the nominees, and I thought, wow, she should have been on a list like that, and it was just the timing I think was just not good. So she moved on to television. I think when I first noticed Ida Lupino, you see her name on the ends of, on the credits for so many of the TV shows that so many of us watched. She directed Big Valley, Bonanza, Donna Reed Show, Gilligan's Island. I mean, so many of those TV shows, over 100 episodes of television. Some of my favorites, I love The Twilight Zone, where it's called the 16 millimeter Shrine. And so she plays an aging actress, much like Norma Desmond, who is just, lives in yesterday with how beautiful she was and the glamour of the 1930s Hollywood. And she's aged and she's not the same. And anyway, at the end, well, hopefully you've seen it, but she disappears into the movie.
into the old days. So it's an incredible performance, and I love that. She also directed another Twilight Zone, which is one of my faves, The Masks, where the gentleman brings his family home on New Year's Eve, and they're just awful people waiting for him to die. They're very greedy family, and he gives them all these masks, and then they turn into the mask that stays on their face. So she directed that episode, which was incredible. She had kind of a sad end of her life. She had a problem with alcohol, and she just had some unhappiness. So she had an assistant who came into her life who just seemed to really help her a lot. So she had some good final years with the help of this friend who kind of helped her get her life together, got her pension from the Directors Guild, which she hadn't gotten. She just needed some help and some support. So fortunately, she was able to get that, and maybe had a little bit of life and love and laughs at the end of her life. Certainly she deserved that. She was only the second woman to be in the Directors Guild of America. Dorothy Arzner was the first, and then it was Ida. So anyway, incredible woman. I do have an Ida Lupino autograph. So this is my autograph. I wrote her a fan letter in about maybe 1993. She died in 1995. And she sent me 3 5x7 photos that were autographed, different poses. So this one's my favorite, but so very grateful. I got a chance to let her know, how much she meant to me, and how wonderful she was. So hopefully she heard from a lot of her fans and she felt the love. So
I would like to say something also to add to Barbara. Thank you for this. I love the UCLA archive. It's kind of one of my favorite things in LA here. And a while back, they showed Ida Lupino's 1950 film Outrage, which is a story about a young woman who is brutally raped. And to see a film of that brutal of a topic in 1950 and directed by a woman, not a man, that film just gutted me. I remember driving home and I thinking, I can't. Like, I've got to take it easy and not see any other movies for a while, because this movie needs to stay with me. And I don't even think correct me if I'm wrong, anybody, but I don't even think that movie is available anywhere. Like, I think the archive was like one of the very few places that you could even see it. And so if anybody out there has seen that film, I mean, it's one of those movies you see and you will absolutely never, ever forget.
Barbara, one of my favorite Ida Lupino movies is The Trouble with Angels. I've been begging CCM to get that for the festival, and wouldn't it be great to get Haley Mills back to be there for that? Such a wonderful movie, Rosalind Russell. Oh.
I love that movie. I love that so much. And she and Rosalind Russell were very good friends and had a wonderful time working on that picture. So yeah, I love that too. That's one of my faves. Yeah. Definitely.
Wanted to jump in and say more support for Trouble with Angels. I was really lucky to help curate a film festival for my alma mater. My high school was an all-girl Catholic high school, and I wanted to choose like strong women of cinema. So we showed Trouble with Angels for opening night. We talked about Ida Lupino, and one of our alums was Sister Nancy Murray, who's Bill Murray's sister. So she was in attendance talking about her journey and becoming a nun, and talking about her girlhood and being a high school student as well. So such a fun film to visit and revisit over the years.
Wonderful. Oh, that's great. That's great.
Yeah. Well, Barbara, thank you so much.
I was going to say,
wait a minute, Carrie. I forgot the recipe.
Right, go ahead, Barbara.
I'm so excited about Ida. So I made Ida's cocktail meatballs, and just from what I've read, I don't think that Ida probably spent a whole lot of time in the kitchen. She probably had staff to do that. So I support that very highly. I'm not much of a cook myself, but I made the meatballs a little larger than cocktail size, but if I can kind of show you what they look like. Woo, there they go. Anyway, they came out pretty good. Yes, and this recipe, I'll post the recipe, but it tells you to really experiment with it. And if you don't have this, use that, and just kind of make your own little sauce that goes on the meatballs. And the recipe said, be fearless like Ida and carve your own path. So
I think those are words to live by.
Yes.
I
Yes.
do have to say, I think Barbara is a great cook because I was lucky enough to take the train down to San Diego recently. Barbara and I saw the Edith Head play. Major shout out to Edith.
Yay, Susan.
And Barbara graciously baked me a St. Olaf friendship cake. And I don't think I told you, but I ate the whole cake on the train coming back. So
Good for you. Wonderful.
So you can cook. You absolutely can. I can
Well,
vouch because I
thank
ate
you.
a lot of friendship cake.
I'll be making some for the festival, so I might have a few extras for some of the Hollywood Kitchen folks.
Oh, I love that. Oh my gosh. So good. Anybody have any final thoughts on Ida Lupino they'd like to share?
I just want to say that I think it's wonderful that we're talking about a woman director.
Yes.
That I was struck listening to this because I had been talking about my time in drama school. I actually double majored in acting and in directing and producing. And it never occurred to me that I couldn't direct and produce because I had grown up with the mentorship of a lot of really strong, wonderful women directors. And as a young person, I didn't really think about how they had been the ones to open doors, and the women before them had started that process. And so it's so nice, I think, that women like Ida Lupino, we're talking about them now, and we're talking about that contribution that they made. And also that you don't have to pick a lane. You can be an actress and you can be a director, and you can do both in your life and in your career. One doesn't detract from the other. So thank you for bringing her to this conversation.
I'm really glad Barbara, because Barbara had listed 3 or 4 different stars she was interested in covering, and then she settled on Ida Lupino, and I was like, oh yes, I'm so glad that was the one that she picked. Somebody has their Facebook up, so if you could turn the Facebook off, guys, I think it's creating a reverb or something. All right, well, thank you so much, Barbara.
Thank you so much.
And next up, we have Annette Bohannick, another Hollywood Kitchen regular, and she is going to be presenting Irene Dunn's chocolate vinegar cake. So, Annette, for joining us.
Thank you so much. Oh my goodness, Irene Dunn. There is so much to say about her. I love the screwball comedy genre, and I really love musicals too. So looking at Irene Dunn's life and legacy is kind of the best of both worlds. But sadly, yeah, she was another one of these extremely talented individuals who, although nominated for the Academy Award, in this case, 5 nominations, never won. But so many stellar performances nominated and not nominated that came from her career. So I did want to start off talking a little bit about her story, and then make sure that I add in our second chocolate cake of the afternoon here. As far as Irene's life goes, she was born in Kentucky. She was raised in Indiana, and her father worked as a steamboat captain. So much of her childhood was spent like really being connected into that legacy, watching the steamboats go up and down the Ohio River, as was the case. And I think if you think of a little later on in her life when she would play Magnolia in Showboat, it interestingly ties in some of her own background and then what we would see eventually in her stage and screen performances as Magnolia. So I'm sure that she drew from those memories in her performance. But while she grew up, she was really focused on vocal training. She wanted to be a singer. Specifically, she wanted to perform opera for the Met. So she trained and studied in Indianapolis and in Chicago, and eventually got her audition at the Metropolitan Opera, but did not get the part to be in their company, sadly. But although that was devastating for her, lucky for us, this opened the door instead to performing in musicals, and later on to a substantial and lucrative film career for her. Irene, having had the vocal training already under her belt, wanted to pursue working in musicals instead, since opera was no longer an option for her. And she did get that experience working many times on stage. Again, probably most famously so of her stage career, working as Magnolia in the iteration of Showboat. She was off to a really strong start. It's her performances on stage that ultimately got her noticed as far as Hollywood would go. And she would wind up making that transition from stage work onto the screen. And throughout the course of her career, she would star in a wide variety of different film genres. But looking fairly early in her career, she would appear in dramas, certainly in romances, and had a really strong start in that capacity until about 1938, when a film called Theodora Goes Wild came about. And that was her big transition into comedy, something that she was actually very reluctant to take on. She was nervous about the prospect of presenting herself as a comedy star. She wasn't sure how audiences would accept her, and again, how serious the audience would I guess treat her as an actress and as a performer when she was cast in these like zanier screwball type roles. And as was the case with many screwball comedy films, I think for the most part, when we think of those, we're probably thinking like 1930s, like socialites getting into these ridiculous situations. And there's certainly a departure from the reality of what was happening like during the years of the Great Depression. But interestingly, with Theodora Goes Wild, it's not so much of that sort of style of screwball. It doesn't really center around, I think, like socialites getting into those really exaggerated scenarios. But instead, it is one of my favorites plot-wise. We have Irene as a character living in this small town with her spinster aunts at this point, and she seems to be living a very quiet life, but she has this sort of secret life where she's writing a fairly salacious novel that has really taken off and is generating a lot of gossip, so much so that her own small town is very much against this novel. They have no idea that the author is right in the middle of their community and playing organ at church on top of all things. So Melvin Douglas comes along, they fall in love, he stirs up her life, and then we learn more about his character, and Irene kind of gives him the same treatment in the end. And so it's a fabulous story. It's so well written, and there are many, many wonderful moments. And as is the case with so many of Irene Dunn's films, even though they're not operas, and in some cases they're not entirely musicals, but we'll usually get a vocal performance out of her, where we'll hear her beautiful voice at work, whether it is that the 1936 version of Showboat, or a film like Theodora Goes Wild. She has at least one musical number in there. She sings Be Still My Heart, and in some of her other comedy roles and drama roles too. And then, of course, I think is it My Favorite Wife, where she sings about how her dreams are gone with the wind. So not a serious vocal performance from her, but it's Irene incorporating her comedic chops and her vocal abilities in order to give us that sort of fun imitative performance of another character in the film. So I think that was the Theodora Goes Wild was really the start of something very special for Irene. She very quickly became a very sought after comedian. Her timing was spot on, and she really discovered that she had such a strong knack for it. And so thank goodness that was the first of many more comedies to follow, in addition to her working in other film genres. I did want to mention too that I was lucky to be able to get to know Anne-Marie Strebick, who is actually the granddaughter of Irene Dunn. Irene in 1938 adopted a little girl named Mary Frances, and that I wanted to point out is especially interesting to me because with that adoption, 3 years later, Irene would make the film Penny Serenade. So it is a sort of there is a personal tie-in to it. Knowing that Irene also went through that process herself and came out of it with this daughter. And so Mary Frances grew up, she married, and she had Anne-Marie, and Anne-Marie lives in the Chicagoland area. So I was lucky to be able to be part of a film series for a library and to coordinate Anne-Marie being present for a screening of Theodora Goes Wild to talk about her time with her grandmother and what it was like to grow up with Irene Dunn. And certainly from what I heard from Anne-Marie speaking about her grandmother, she was very down to earth. She opened and answered her fan mail. Anne-Marie was usually tasked with licking envelopes, so not a glamorous job there. But she was a dear, devoted grandmother. She always held family highly in the highest of regards. She took her profession very seriously. She was very devoted to her husband. She married a dentist in the thick of her Hollywood years, and they had the challenges of being a bi-coastal couple for a time and making sure that the marriage would work, and they stayed together over time. She was also a humanitarian. She was devoted to her faith as well, and certainly had a lot of things going for her in terms of what she wanted to prioritize in her life. And I think all worked out for her. I think her life was a life well lived and well led, and her legacy continues to be remembered in her hometown and beyond. But I wanted to talk about those Oscar nominations. So I mentioned Irene was nominated 5 times. The first, the ceremony that honored the films from 1930 and 1931. So Irene was nominated for her role in Cimarron. She was up against Marlene Dietrich in Morocco, Marie Dressler in Min and Bill, and Anne Harding in Holiday, and Norma Shearer in A Free Soul. Marie Dressler won that year for Min and Bill. Fast forward a few years later, 1936, we have Louise Reiner nominated for her role as Anna Held in The Great Ziegfeld. Louise won that year, but that year Irene was nominated for Theodora Goes Wild. Gladys George was nominated for Valiant as the word for Carrie. Carol Lombard for My Man Godfrey, and Norma Shearer once again for Romeo and Juliet. Then the next year, 1937, Louise Reiner won again, this time for The Good Earth. But that same year, Irene Dunne was nominated for The Awful Truth, Greta Garbo for Camille, Janet Gaynor for A Star Is Born, and Barbara Stanwyck for Stella Dallas. So a lot of stiff competition along the way, as is the case for many of these performers. Then onward, let's see here, good old 1939, Irene Dunne was nominated for Love Affair. Vivien Leigh was nominated for Scarlett O'Hara and Gone with the Wind. So obviously Vivien won. Bette Davis for Dark Victory, Greta Garbo for Ninotchka, and Greer Garson for Goodbye, Mr. Chips. So another difficult year, unsurprisingly so. And the final round, 1948, Jane Wyman is nominated for Johnny Belinda, Ingrid Bergman for Joan of Arc, Olivia de Havilland for The Snake Pit, Irene Dunne for I Remember Mama, and Barbara Stanwyck for Sorry, Wrong Number. And that year, Jane Wyman won for Johnny Belinda. Now, any number of these performances, Irene's and all the other actresses nominated, like these are all exceptional performances and films. And some of them I can definitely see why certain actresses won over others. Again, the stiff competition does come in. But looking at Irene's roles, I mean, although I do adore Theodora Goes Wild, I think in particular her performance for I Remember Mama, like she's just at the center of the story. She takes us through different scenarios and emotions, and is so, I think, just foundational to the plot, where I think that's the one she deserved the Oscar for the most, as far as my own opinion goes. But I think that's just unfortunately the luck that Irene had as far as the Academy Awards ceremonies went. Now, I did, in reading about Irene's life and legacy, I did find that as far as how she wanted to be remembered, she just said that she wanted to be remembered for how she was in the movies. So I think she got that much. And in addition to that, her biggest regret was not writing an autobiography, which I think would have been fascinating to read as well. But with my own blogging, my Hometowns to Hollywood work, I've been able to travel to where Irene was born and where she grew up. And she's remembered there as well. In Louisville, Kentucky, there is a historical marker that designates Irene Dunne as one of the notable individuals. On the other side of the Ohio River, there's the small town of Madison, Indiana, where she spent her time growing up. There's another historical marker with different text that honors her there. Her childhood home, stands there, and there is still a plaque on it that says Dunn without the E, which is her given last name. So the family that lives there just kept it. There is a fountain in town that she financed in terms of having it restored. It's like central to the Madison, Indiana downtown area, as well as a lot of different points of interest. There's a church she went to and several other buildings that are of note. And I guess just northwest of that, there's a Boy Scout camp where Irene Dunn helped finance their gates. It's called Camp Louis Ernst, and there's two big columns, and one column has the name of the camp, and the other part of it has a column that says dedicated by Irene Dunn in 1939, and that's still there as well. So she's still remembered, at least in her hometown, and of course beyond that, she's got different tributes in California as well, and of course her family goes on to celebrate her legacy. That's what I have to say about Irene Dunn. And of course, the most important chocolatey part of this is her chocolate vinegar cake. It's supposed to be a 2-layer cake. I unfortunately didn't have the pans for layering, so I just put it in a big baking dish, but it is so good. It is, as mentioned, a vinegar chocolate cake. So I think the thing that made this one different for me is the 5-teaspoon vinegar addition. I used 5 teaspoons of apple cider vinegar, and it's not like it doesn't taste like a vinegar-filled cake or anything, but there is like kind of a tang to it, but not to the point where it's sour. There's so much brown sugar in this, and obviously chocolate, where I think any sourness is masked with it. And I frosted it and topped it with coconut shavings, so it's delicious, I will say.
Very good, Annette. That looks really tasty.
Thank you.
Is a good thing to use in recipes, because it can, whether you're marinating, it gives a certain softness to certain foods. So when I first saw it, I was like, yep, that's old school.
Yeah, I did notice, like when I was mixing up the batter, I felt like it was pretty heavy as far as cake batter goes. But then when I added in the vinegar and I think it was the baking soda, it all started to just foam up and lightened up the whole thing. So I think that's why it's a crucial ingredient.
Chemistry. And I'm so glad that you brought Irene Dunn to this, because I love her. I love her so much as a soprano. Like,
me too.
I need to give though a shameless plug for people who like Irene Dunn. I did a lecture for the Art Deco Society of Los Angeles at the end of last year, all about operetta musicals and operetta inspired musicals of the 1920s and 30s. And it's streaming again right now. So if people are interested in it, you can go to the Art Deco Society of Los Angeles website, and there's information there about how to get access to it. I think it's a $10 donation if you're not a member. All of the proceeds go to historic preservation in Los Angeles, but I talk at length about the film version of Showboat that Irene Dunn was in, the 1936 film, showed some clips. So if people out there want to learn more about Irene Dunn, don't know a ton about Showboat, go watch that lecture and enjoy. It's fun, if I do say so myself, and I do.
And I agree, I've seen it.
If you are have cable or have access to the TCM app or the YouTube live TV or Sling TV that offers the TCM channel, The Awful Truth is still playing on their streaming service, and nothing is funnier when he is in that chair, Cary Grant, and he falls down and she's singing. It's just magnificent. And then when she comes in and she's trying to play his sister, and with the woo,
get the picture.
Just, it just as you can see, I love every moment of it, every moment, and I love the fact that I have the app and it's on every device I own. So if I'm ever stranded somewhere, as long as I have something to plug into, I will be watching DCM. This has just been so wonderful to have everyone's aspect of favorite stars that they like, and to hear what makes you love them, and just the affection that we all have for each other. It's really great. I hope I will be seeing most of you in Hollywood. Benjamin, got your ticket?
I'm not sure if he's
Yes.
here. Oh, he does. He is here.
I am. It's a countdown right now. It's just 2 weeks. So fingers crossed, I will be there.
Melanie, are you joining us?
I have to work out of town. I will arrive on Monday, the day after the festival ends. I have a class starting, so it really breaks my heart. I'm not going to be able to coincide, but you guys have fun without me.
And Melody, we're going to segue to you next. Melody is a new face here on Hollywood Kitchen. She's been a frequent viewer and reached out to me. And she wanted to talk about Carole Lombard. And I'm a big Lombard fan as well. And I thought that'd be a wonderful addition to the Oscar cook-along. So Melanie, welcome.
Yes, thank you so much. I am a big fan. Thank you so much for inviting me. It's been great to hear about all of these stars and learn from you all. I'm going to share about a very inspirational person in my life, someone I never met, but who inspires me and makes me think every day, and that's Carole Lombard. And we're going to start with the recipe. You know, I suppose that food, like fashion, is cyclical and it goes through stages of popularity. I know that these people were living through the Depression, but these people we're talking about had money. So when I see recipes associated with Carole Lombard, like lettuce soup, spinach soup, and chicken mousse, I kind of wanted to, you know, cop out and say, well, I know for a fact that she liked Coca-Cola. That I do know. I don't really know if she was much of a cook. She employed a full-time staff at her home. And so I decided to go with a cake that I know she and Clark Gable enjoyed many times at the Brown Derby, and that is their grapefruit cake. I got that recipe out of the 60th anniversary edition that was published in 2009, and it has about 500 recipes from that iconic restaurant. That the Brown Derby certainly is part of Carole Lombard lore, and I want to thank my friend Teresa for virtually helping me interpret the recipe. I didn't quite get the eggs to peak, the egg whites to peak. They needed to be folded into the recipe. And I think that's kind of what killed it for me, but it's good. It's not perfect. If anyone ever goes to the Brown Derby at, I went to one in Florida. I don't know if that one's still there, but the Disney Hollywood Studios has a Brown Derby restaurant. You can maybe try the grapefruit cake, but there you go. If you can see it, pretty appetizing, and you can Google the recipe. It does come up on the internet for free. And I would like to also wish my parents and Clark and Carole Lombard a very happy anniversary. Both my parents and Clark and Carole will celebrate their anniversary on March 29th. Clark and Carole would have been married 83 years this year. They married March 29th, 1939 on a break from Gone with the Wind. He had a couple days off. He ran with her to Arizona. They did the deed. They got back and met the press the following day. Well, many of you know that Carole was born in Indiana. She is a Midwestern girl. She, after her parents separated, moved to California. They spent time in the Bay Area, eventually made their way to Los Angeles. And Carole started out in films as a small child in the silent era and eventually became a contract player after an auto accident that disfigured her face and left a pretty significant scar on her face. She was kind of relegated to comedic roles. She worked in Max Sinnett's shorts, his comedies, which are fantastic. Now let's get into why Carole did not win an Oscar. I'm going to give you a couple of reasons why I think she did not win an Oscar, and then I'm going to give you a couple of reasons why I think that she should have won an Oscar. And it's so apropos that not only did I kind of mess up my cake in preparation for this, we're talking about a woman known very much for her comedic talents and starring in these screwball comedies. I feel like this could have been in the movie. It could have been in the script somehow. But anyway, Carole was a fantastic actress. She had great depth of emotion and range, and she's just as believable playing the dutiful, self-sacrificing nurse in a movie like Vigil in the Night as she is the madcap heiress Irene Bullock in My Man Godfrey. And she really hit her stride and rose to ultra prominence
in the mid-30s in those screwball comedies, kind of starting in 1934 with 20th Century alongside John Barrymore. And Jack and Darren and Cora Sue mentioned a little earlier when we were discussing William Powell that he made it look so easy. And I want to bring forth that thought with Carol as well. You know, she had the notoriety of kind of being zany, and she certainly was full of life. And so maybe people thought, oh, that's just Carol being Carol. So that's one reason that perhaps she did not win an Oscar. I also wonder how much publicity was behind the nominations and who won back in the 1930s. I feel like very much it's a publicity campaign today as far as the nominations and who wins. Of course, the Academy is made up of many different people in the entertainment industry, and they vote. They're supposed to have seen all the nominations before they vote on a category, but it does make me wonder how publicity played into it. Comedy also and drama are not apples to apples comparisons. Since It Happened One Night, and of course that's the one film that Gable won for, he won his Best Actor Academy Award for It Happened One Night in 1935. Only 7 or 8 comedies, and I say only about 7 or 8 because some are comedy dramas, some are musicals like Going My Way, La La Land, and The Artist, have won since 1936, 1935, I believe is when the movie came out. So the Academy doesn't have a history of really favoring comedy over drama. So those are a couple of reasons why I think Carol maybe was snubbed when she was nominated for My Man Godfrey in 1937, alongside Irene Dunne. As Annette already pointed out, Irene and Carol were great friends. Here is a reason, or a couple of reasons, I think that Carol probably should have won for My Man Godfrey in 1937. I think arguably that could have been her year. She was not nominated ever again for anything else, although her performances were very captivating, very believable. Carol had a gift for that, really rapid, witty repartee that we come to associate with screwball comedy. I don't think all actors have that gift, and I think Carol really gave a particularly strong performance. I'm not gonna really judge her against other comedians and actresses in screwball comedies, but I do believe her performance was particularly strong, and we could award her for her ability to shed tears, but man, it takes energy to perform like she did. Kind of spurts things off. I thought she did a great job, and I feel like she should have won. As Annette already went through some of the nominees that year, I won't rehash them except to remind you that it was Louise Reiner who took home the Best Actress Oscar in 1937 for her role in The Great Ziegfeld. And I was looking at some of these performances just to remind myself about who her competition was in that year. And I feel like Louise Reiner's performance was pretty good, but very stagey, very theatrical, very overdramatic. And that might have been a direction she received from the director. It's something that I think is really typical of that era. And so, you know, really nothing that was unique to that era, if that makes sense. So there you go. I posited why I think she didn't win and why I think she should have won. And Carol has a great lasting legacy. A lot of the people who worked with her mourned her for the rest of her life. She was taken from us far too soon. She died at the age of 33 in becoming the first woman to die in service of her country, January 1942. She was coming back from Indiana and a couple of other states on a war bonds tour. So the United States had just been in the war a few weeks, really, by the time she died. She died in a plane crash. She hit Mount Potosi in Nevada coming back from that war bonds tour. We don't really know why she was in a hurry to get back, why she decided to fly and not take the train as was her original itinerary. There's lots of speculation, but she was definitely taken from us too soon. And it's fun to think of the difference between stereotypical Gable and stereotypical Carol. He was known for being very cheap, a little introverted, a little moody, and she was so full of life, just loved life. She even has quotes in magazines about talking about how much she loved the mundane part of life, just doing her nails, going on walks, being at home, talking. And of course, this really inspired a lot of people who worked with her and who outlived her. Of course, Lucille Ball. Lucy, when she befriended a young actress from Texas named Mildred, who later became Carol Cook, she inspired her to take the name Carol Cook as a stage name because she said that Carol Lombard told her that the AR in a name was a key for good luck. And she said, well, your name is Lucille Ball. She goes, yes, but I really didn't get lucky until I became a Narnaz. So there you go. That's it. Does anybody have any questions or want to talk about Carol? I really love Carol. I've done a lot of significant archival research, and while I don't have a lot to share here, I will tell you that she apparently had an affinity for the color green. I've seen a lot of things. She was a writer with green type. I didn't really even know that you could do that, but green type, and wrote a lot in green pen. Yes, Ruth, what would you like to say or ask about Carol?
First of all, she and Cary Grant in name only, also with our girl Kay Francis, was a fun movie to watch. They are great in it. It is just, she was magnificent. She really was. The range of emotions, and her laugh, and her joy, at every point of the relationship. But then when she put her foot down, she went over there, So I really like her tenacity, it's a great movie of them together. And I really like her. I really do. She's fun to watch. She had great wide range. Does she have family or anyone that's like the legacy of her flame to keep her alive?
She does. Her Christie and Gable, of course, had no children. She had two brothers, and I can't remember if one or both brothers had children, but they would be her nieces and nephews, and so they would be probably her closest kin that survived her or that are alive today.
I'm shocked that she wasn't nominated for To Be or Not To Be, which I think at least posthumously, such a great performance. And I will say, Dottie Ponadell was also good friends with Carol Lombard, used to do her makeup. And there are stories in the book that Dottie tells about how unbelievably generous Carol Lombard was. There was some crew member, I forgot this whole story now, that was having really hard times. And she did this thing where she had this ribbon that kept going out and out and out of the soundstage into the studio, and there was a car. She gave that person a car. She was extremely generous. Everyone loved her, talked like a sailor. I worship Carol Lombard.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love a lot of her films. I love the dramas. I love the comedies. One film I really like, and a lot of people haven't seen it, and it's not really one that was well received, was one called True Confession. It's another screwball comedy. Fred McMurray's in it with her. She does a lot of funny things with her face and outbursts. It's really funny. And then another one, of course, that I love is Nothing Sacred, because it's the only film where we get to see that gorgeous smile and those radiant blue eyes in color. And she absolutely was beautiful. And I've gotten to talk to now a few people because of Miss Cora Sue Collins who knew her, and they all pretty much say the same thing. Yes, she was very beautiful. Yes, she was very generous. Yes, she was very funny. I met Mickey Rooney in 2013, and we talked about Carol Lombard and Ava Gardner. I know Laura's not here anymore, a little bit. And he mainly just remembered that she was blonde. Thanks, Mickey.
Well, thank you, Melanie. This was a great presentation. And then Thank you for joining us. I'm going to go lastly because I thought I put myself at the end here. And I kind of wrestled with who to talk about, but ultimately, I'm a huge film noir junkie, as anyone who knows me doubtless knows. And I love noir and I love Double Indemnity. I've seen that movie, I don't even know how many times. And I had always assumed Edward G. Robinson was Oscar nominated. If not for that, then for tons of other stuff. I was totally wrong. And one night while I was watching Double Indemnity for like the zillionth time on TCM, I picked up my phone and I looked and realized he didn't even get nominated for that film. So the actors who got nominated for Best Supporting Actor that year, which was I think 1945, winner was Barry Fitzgerald for Going My Way. Nominees were Hume Cronyn for The Seventh Cross, Claude Rains for Mr. Skeffington, Clifton Webb for Laura, and Monty Woolley for Since You Went Away. But I was just shocked that Edward G. Robinson was not nominated because, frankly, when you see Double Indemnity, he's the conscience of that movie, you know, and he's kind of the tie that kind of holds that movie together. And also the other thing is, I love the scene where he talks about all the insurance payouts and he goes, we're sunken or have to pay through the nose. And he takes a drink, and that entire speech, that whole scene was like one take. And to me, I consider that performance like just the very epitome of what a great supporting actor, a supporting performance in a film does. And I don't think Edward G. Robinson ever got a competitive Oscar nomination, and he got an honorary Oscar after he died. So I think that stinks. And so I looked up a little research on Edward G. Robinson, and I was surprised at what I did find. I found a spread about having breakfast at Edward G. Robinson's house around the time Little Caesar came out. And I'm like, oh, of course, brunch and Little Caesar totally makes sense, I guess. But he admits freely that he doesn't cook. His wife basically admits she doesn't cook and poses with their cook. And she's kind of standing over, peering over the cook's shoulder in the photo play or whatever spread it was. So I thought that was kind of funny for them to openly admit to not cooking in a magazine, because that wasn't always common. And they kind of talk about what he likes to eat for brunch, and they offer up some different recipes. But then I went to the Edward G. Robinson Encyclopedia, which is a book out there, and it talked about how much he loved eggplant parmesan. And I thought, you know what? That sounds like the thing I ought to make. So, because Edward G. Robinson should have won an Oscar, he didn't, and that stinks. So I offer up the Edward G. Robinson eggplant parmesan as my contribution to the show. I made it in advance because trying to host and juggle all the guests I figured would be a lot of work, so I didn't want to be trying to cook on camera at the same time. But I have my Eddie G book right here on the kitchen table. And I truly think he is also an underrated actor as well. Like we've talked about with Irene Dunn, Carol Lombard, Cary Grant, William Powell, he makes it look easy. And also I think that a lot of the crime films he did, I just think people kind of underestimate some of these stars and their talents. And I think sometimes when you think of a lesser talent in a role, it's not the same movie. And Edward G., he was just so consistently brilliant in everything that he did, from his very first movies all the way up until the very end of his life. And I find that when you watch him in a film, you take your eyes off almost everybody and everything else, and he becomes the sole focus. So he's just such a great talent, and he is truly one of Hollywood's great character actors.
Even in the overblown Cecil B. DeMille version of The Ten Commandments with all-star cast, his scenes as Dathan are so good. How could he not get an Oscar nomination for that?
I just think he was so overlooked so many times. It's just ridiculous, you know? Maybe because he didn't have a good enough publicity team behind it. I'm not sure what it is. I'm not sure. But yeah, I mean, what a talent. Anybody else have any thoughts on Edward G. Robinson?
I will say that he has an arc of his career that it really truly is epic. I've enjoyed him through all the varieties of Eddie G. I can't understand why he didn't win an Oscar.
I know. And by the way, someone did ask what I'm drinking. I don't drink alcohol anymore. I haven't in a long time, but I am drinking a non-alcoholic mint julep in a martini glass. So in case anyone's curious.
I, on the other hand, enjoy alcohol completely and never drink anything.
As for Edward G. Robinson on the set of The Hole in the Head, he was very kind to young Eddie Hodges and had this great sense of humor. And nobody ever talks about Edward G. Robinson and his great sense of humor, but he did. He was a lot of fun.
And he was also a Renaissance man. He collected a huge amount of incredible and
Fabulous
art.
art.
He was very interested in art and design, and he really, there was so much more to him than kind of the snarling, cigar chomping gangster that I think he kind of got shoehorned into playing, you know.
And we are going to see him at the festival this year because they're showing Soylent Green.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
Wow. Christie, he was in Larceny Inc., which I thought was so fun. I love when that comes on.
That is, it was really good.
And Night Has 1,000 Eyes.
One of my favorite lines from Double Indemnity is when, it's at the very end and Walter says, you couldn't see it, Keyes, because it was too close. I was right across the desk. And Keyes said, oh, closer than that, Walter. I just love that.
Oh, yeah.
It's such a fondness for him.
I agree.
He was born Emanuel Goldenberg to Yiddish-speaking family, so he might have been eating this Mogen David cake here.
Excellent. Well, I just want to thank everybody for joining me. This has been yet another epic episode. This one ran 3 full hours, guys. So that's about the same length the Oscar show tonight will run. But I think this has been a lot of fun, and maybe more fun than that. Who knows? But
well, I can tell you this. My chicken is coming out of the oven. It is gorgeous.
Oh, show us. Show us.
Okay, let me see if I can give you a view. There will be pictures, trust me.
Okay. And by the way, when I get a chance, I'm going to post the video and photos and recipes of all this stuff. Oh, Ruth. Oh my gosh, that looks good.
Yum.
We need that, Ruth.
The 2 pounds of cheese has been grated. The milk and water has been is ready to boil with a garlic clove, some thyme, and rosemary. And I will be sending pictures.
Can you send that mac and cheese recipe too, Ruth? I know it's not a Hollywood star one, but I don't care. I need it.
Yes. I'm a huge mac and cheese fan. I make different varieties of it all the time. So if we're gonna do a dinner, let me know. I'll hook you up.
All right. All right. Well, guys, thank you so much, everybody, for joining me today in this celebration of people who were incredibly talented, contributed so much to the art of cinema, and darn well should have won Oscars. So I hope all of you have an happy Oscar Sunday, regardless of whether you watch the big show or not. And thank you to everybody who has helped me, supported me, watched the show. Please keep staying tuned for more food, fun, and film history continuing to happen here at Hollywood Kitchen.
Thank you,
Bye,
Carrie.
everybody. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Yeah.